Young Daun falls into a perfectly designed trap. He falls into a trap. The colleagues above didn't expect such an unlucky name to fall here. Even though Seung-woo wanted to save him, he didn't have time. Jung Daon lost too much blood, but his senses gradually became blurry. Now he wished it wasn't true. It shouldn't be, since Young Daon was summoned to this cruel world. This cruel truth started a month ago when he was summoned to a strange world called a dungeon. He didn't understand why everyone present was confused by what had happened. Some have even speculated that they were hypnotized. A white rabbit came to greet everyone in the dungeon. White Rabbit introduces himself as the manager of this game. Everyone here is invited to attend the game. One of the summons was so angry that he didn't want to hear the rabbit talk anymore. He wants to come back. But because of his temperament, he was the first to die in this game. Everyone is shocked that this is not a dream but a reality. The game has officially started. The dungeon world is not hell, but monsters can appear anywhere in the darkness. Everyone needs to avoid dungeon traps to stay alive. As time progresses, the consequence of carelessness is death, and even the slightest mistakes are sometimes present. It's a case of killing each other to survive, because the goal is to survive. The scene at the beginning of the story is when Young Daeon is on his last mission when he falls into a trap. Young Daeon sat in the hole listening to the battle. He guessed there were more than 10 survivors since their success. It seems Seung-woo did well. Young Daeon himself was very surprised, because for some reason he wasn't dead yet. Everyone above was still trying to kill the boss monster. Thanks to his efforts, Seung-woo defeated the final boss. White Rabbit appeared and complimented everyone on their job well done. It was amazing. It was unexpected that such a weakling would defeat this terrible final boss. The White Rabbit especially compliments Seung-woo because he's so awesome. He asked if he could finally go home, but he didn't think that this ability needed to be used to be ready to go to the next area. Everyone frantically argued back as he promised if he killed the final boss, he would clear the game. However, he slyly said that it was the completion of Zone 1 and the next one was waiting. He apologized for disappointing everyone. But this was the start of the dungeon. The White Rabbit gave everyone the gift of recovering from their injured and tired bodies, and everyone was ready to go to the next zone. Coincidentally, when the White Rabbit gave the ability to recover, Young Daeon, who was caught in the trap, also woke up and recovered. When the White Rabbit found out that she was still alive, he refused to help her find people to keep her company because the system was now determined that she was dead. All abilities in the display panel were broken and reaching their maximum potential. Young Daon doesn't want to die. Just like that, he uses all his abilities to find a way out. Somehow, Young Daeon uses his powers to create food. It had been a month since he had eaten such a filling meal, but now that Young Daeon thought of this place as heaven, he could avoid the pursuit of monsters. Jung Daeon felt that he could not waste time here, no matter how safe. He wants out. Next to this is a rock wall that is quite high and hard. Suddenly, Jing Daon came up with the first idea. He would trace and turn in the direction that if he dug slowly and avoided the rock walls, he could get out, though he didn't know if the outcome would be successful. Young Daeon wants to try? But trouble comes when he digs too much ground with no place to put it. It will bury him alive. Young Daeon Turun came up with the initiative to put the quarried stones in storage while focusing on digging the ground. Young Daeon accidentally unlocked a new skill. It was like the first time he knew what it felt like to be able to rip anything apart. In addition to the skill he had acquired as a mud master, it had a function to make it easier to coagulate mud. Young Daeon was initially disgusted because he never received the same strength skill as Seung-woo, but this skill later helped him a lot in digging tunnels. The White Rabbit came to see if Young Daeon was dead. Not wishing he could dig a tunnel to escape on his own, the White Rabbit thought he would give up and die. It followed the tunnel he dug and found him. White Rabbit was amazed by the length of the tunnel he had dug. He didn't understand how he could make a food bed and even a table to make a house. He makes a lot of food. The White Rabbit was horrified at what was happening before his eyes, followed by a series of questions about whether Young Daeon thought it would eat his food, and that he only had Fuho skills. He thought for a while, and then realized that Young Daeon had received a new skill, acknowledged himself, and said that the skill was basic. The White Rabbit laughed. He's a very strange person. Even his first skill didn't help. Even though it was interesting, it turned out to be a waste of effort. It was said that he had to get ready because while he was playing here with some muck, the next player had finished the first phase. Young Daon only now saw the problem. He had forgotten the dungeon was being rebuilt, meaning all the tunnels he made would be remade. Jung Daeon had to return to where he started immediately. The White Rabbit was very happy at this time, because Jung Daeon would do it, of course. It couldn't die here. He advises Jing down instead of looking for a way to run designing a grave for himself, but looking for a way to finish the game quickly. According to him, Jung Daeon is a bad player, and bad players will be regenerated. He was enraged by a set of rules that only had the right to kill players who didn't follow the rules. White rabbits can't just kill players. Jung Daeon was also aware of this problem, so he didn't care about the White Rabbit anymore. He turned around to continue his work, but a problem arose having just re-erected the foundations. In the cave, the foundations were weakening, making the groundwater quickly flow into the aqueduct. The ground rose higher and higher, potentially sinking Jung Daeon. Just in time, he swam in the sea. He found a way. He didn't want to die like this, considering the amount of cleared land in Jung Daeon's inventory. The White Rabbit was once again amazed at what it could do. He manipulated the skill to use the entire earth, layered like a mountain, to fill the ground cracks. But the power was too great. It couldn't withstand the pressure of the water. The higher the level of the earth, the stronger the crushed. Jung Daeon tried to make the earth into bricks, and finally, he succeeded in building a wall to prevent water from entering. Groundwater stopped flowing into the tunnel. Jung Daeon thought he was dead this time. In that case, some people would give up and die. White Rabbit scolded Jung Daeon for living like a leech. However, he didn't think so because he had been dead ever since he entered this game. Jung Daeon thanks the White Rabbit for solving the drinking water problem. Thanks to that, once again Jing Daeon uses his skills to build a lake with a pipe system to prevent groundwater from being a pond. Now he wants to show the White Rabbit something interesting. Jung Daeon uses his skills to conveniently build several more decorative statues. The White Rabbit thinks he is using his skills more proficiently by blocking groundwater. The White Rabbit standing beside him kept saying that this was a useless skill in battle. Jung Daeon called subtlety useless, as the White Rabbit said to finish a pond and a fountain. The system tells if the reward is that there will be live fish in the pond it creates. There was a school of fish that appeared in the pond. The White Rabbit was so shocked that it fell to the ground, completely ignorant of what had happened. Jung Daeon is very happy because from now on he doesn't have to worry about starving to death. There is clean water and fish. God help him. The White Rabbit, who always walked beside Jung Daeon, shouted not to expect too much. Then Jung Daeon lit a fire to grill the fish. He purposely teased the White Rabbit just by looking at it made him crave it. White Rabbit doubted whether this was a dungeon. He saw players casually eating meat. Jung Daeon asked the White Rabbit if he was hungry, because he seemed to be baking too much, so he was afraid he wouldn't eat at all. White Rabbit wanted to know why he ate it with fire. Isn't it delicious eaten raw? Seeing how chatty the White Rabbit was made him feel no regrets at all. Instead, she thanked him, because she didn't have to feel lonely anymore. Because the White Rabbit helped Jung Daeon with some ideas, so he got a grilled meat reward. It was a large piece of grilled meat. The rabbit kept screaming, "Don't tease him," but his mouth was already drooling. Jung Daeon deliberately didn't look, pretending to say that he had forgotten that rabbits were herbivores. He shouted angrily, saying that he could eat them, because he is a special rabbit that can eat meat. After being full, Jung Daeon went to sleep. The White Rabbit saw him fall asleep, exclaiming that this person is the first in the history of the dungeon. He probably still doesn't know anything about this world. The monsters in the dungeon are always hungry. Don't expect too much in this place of no return, just like the White Rabbit said. A big wild boar, attracted by the smell of barbecue, came to attack Jung Daeon while he was sleeping. Luckily, he woke up soon after remembering Sung Woo's words. This monster only strengthens his intelligence. Jung Daeon tried to attack him with the mud he created. He was lucky to block the groundwater, not to mention that this beast was the strongest predator in the first stage. It has a sturdy and strong body that even the slightest negligence can lead to death. There's only one way Jung Daeon must rule the land in another way. After he finished arranging, he summoned a pig to show his strength. With one shot, it broke through the wall. The situation is more serious. Jing Daeon thought it was too strong, and it was okay to continue like this. Besides, if it continued here, the groundwater would burst downwards again. He shouts, "Don't think he lost." Jing Daeon had created a huge earthen ball, and he used this method to kill monsters. Any monster would have died under this attack. But in the end, it was a joke because Jung Daeon couldn't lift such a big earthen ball. And this time it's the boar's turn to attack. He didn't think he couldn't throw it away. If this continued, he would die. But if he caught this wild boar, he would have pork to eat. Greasy taste is the taste he dreams of now. He could feel that this was motivation. He then crushed the ground into pellets and bulk clumps, and finally, young Daun managed to defeat the wild boar. The White Rabbit still couldn't believe this. It was absolutely clear that Stage 1 was a medium-level survival skill. Those who reached certain conditions could acquire additional skills. The only effect of the skill was to survive in this harsh place, and it was also important to hone the skill as much as possible. However, skills could only be raised as long as life and battle. Death. But it wasn't easy, and Young Daeon's mud skill increased to a level the White Rabbit had never seen in just one stage. It also increased unnaturally. Young Daeon ran to retrieve the wild boar he had just defeated. The White Rabbit cursed Young Daeon, but he didn't care and started slaughtering the wild boar. After 2 hours, the temperature of the room will change due to environmental influences. If the meat is contaminated, it will lose its taste when completing each task. Young Daeon went down to tell the White Rabbit. The angry White Rabbit thought it was none of his business. Don't mutter, and then turned to him before staying alone in this place with no one to talk to was boring. He was trying to make a rope to catch a wild boar. The White Rabbit taunted young Daeons while roasting a wild boar that would attract monsters. Wild boars come, they will fall into the trap and die Jingdown, no need to fight for food. Again, this method is very effective after that many wild boars come because of the smell. The wild boar came back to attack young Daeon. She was crying. Didn't know what to say. I don't know how many times he's been in this situation. Jongdaeon didn't want to die. Then help appeared. Sungwoo came to help to beat the wild boar. In a state of urgency, Jongdaeon unknowingly released his abilities, takes a stone from his hand and throws it at the target. Regarding wild boar. After a fierce battle, he saw a wild boar that was killed by him alone and was shocked. Luckily he was fine, but quite dangerous. He asked Sungwoo if he was all right. Considering the situation, everyone was fine. No one was seriously injured. He was relieved. Young Daeon had killed about 100 wild boars, so he received a new skill. As a gift. Besides that, Sungwoo is also very strong like a tiger. It was time for everyone to head back to the cave. As it was getting dark, one of them looked at the pile of wild boars regretfully. What a waste. It had been a few days since they had eaten. The meat of this species was poison. But if it wasn't eaten for a long time, they would starve to death. Even though there wasn't enough clean food, there were a lot of dead monsters right now, so they decided to stockpile some. For now, the rabbit said if young Daeon was here, he could use purification skills to clean the food. Sungwoo whispered, "People thought he was just someone who cooked and cleaned food. The game aims to survive, not fight, and the one who fights always has to kill the target and get the reward. But if people don't have food, they won't be able to fight back." Sungwoo once again confirms that Young Daeon helped them. On the other hand, Young Daeon also got the same power as Seung-woo because they trapped the wild boar together. Young Daeon was starting to get annoyed by the number of pork bones. He must have built this place a bit wider. The White Rabbit had been sitting in a corner ever since learning of the strength skill he obtained. He didn't understand why it had suddenly been acquired by him. White Rabbit wanted to confirm. So he asked him. And what he was saying was, his strength was the result of having completed the achievement of capturing a wild boar. Jingdown is also very skeptical and killed 100 boars with his own hands. There's only one reason why those 100 boars fell into the trap. The White Rabbit discovered the matter had gone through several regenerates when reconstructing its population, also refixed. But the total population of boars living in this area was about 40 animals. This meant that even if regenerated, the number of pigs that Young Daeon killed would still accumulate under normal circumstances. Jingdown thought that when he catches another animal, it will still count by this method or cumulative. Then when he catches 100 different monsters, then he will get an achievement, but it's a bit hard to catch that many without traps. The White Rabbit cursed at Young Daeon because he ate pork every day. If he continued to eat it, he would turn into a pig. A squirrel outside scraping the bone followed the scent of the wall to enter the dungeon. Inside the basement, there are many pork bones left by Young Daeon. The flaming squirrel eyes felt that this place was too big following the falling bones, which eventually fell into the bowl that was placed on the sleeping Young Daeon's stomach. Young Daeon wakes up to see a happy little squirrel. After months alone in the cave, he finally met the others. He gently touched the baby squirrel's head. He was afraid that he would hit the baby squirrel, and afraid that it would run away. But the little squirrel looked at Young Daeon with loving eyes. Again, accidentally, Daun has unlocked more skills this time, and is a squirrel good friend. The system indicated that he had successfully tamed the timid little squirrel in the forest within the dungeon. He admired this wonderful relationship. Daun had never seen such unreasonable accomplishments when he was with his comrades. Before his best friend came, he had no idea what accomplishments he had accomplished. But what matters is that he finally has a friend. Daun named the squirrel Pokio. He found that the ground squirrels understood what he was saying. Daun put his right hand on it and told the squirrel to sit down. The squirrel listened to what he told him to do. He didn't understand what he had just shouted, but it beckoned him. Then the squirrel told Daun to follow him. He didn't know what he was doing, but Daun followed him. Found that the place where the little squirrel came from was the tree root to climb up. He held out a glimmer of hope that he could get up there. The unexpected fact is that Daun was able to escape from the tunnel thanks to this method. Above the dungeon was green meadow, something he had not seen in a long time. But soon Daun was attacked by the wolves. He ran back into the wolf dungeon, determined not to let it escape. The wolves chased to the end while Daun was carelessly attacked by the bloody wolves. Daun knew if he wasn't careful, he would die. He tried to attack one side of his face. Then Daun remembered his ability and used his ability to attack the wolves. He succeeded, the first time this extraordinary power. His physical state as he dug tunnels all day, he felt because during battle it was a useful skill. Indeed, the wolf must have taken some of the damage from the blow just now, but he finished it in the remaining time. The biggest limitation of this skill is the duration. The remaining duration is 6 seconds. He couldn't wait any longer when the remaining time was 3 seconds. Daun was able to pull out the sword from the inventory, and the wolf fought back. At that moment he realized his swift front paw attack was dangerous. He had no chance of winning if he continued to attack like that. When the wolf opened its mouth, he decided this was the last time he would have a chance to attack. That afternoon, Rabbit came to look for Daun. It felt wrong that he wasn't grilling meat today. He suspected that maybe Daun ate too much pork and turned into a pig. When he met Daun in armor, he told the White Rabbit that he needed a day to perform. There are always a lot of dangerous things these days. The White Rabbit found that the object in his hand was the head of an innocent wolf. Maybe he had found his way to the surface. Since that day, Daun has been working hard on his wild boar skills. He wanted to get stronger. The fact that Daun's strength also continued to increase after training in the tunnel. Daun decided to go out today to try his strength. There were 2 wolves in front of him. He aimed to the right and prepared to attack the 2 black pigs. Let's see how much he increased his strength. He was hoping to defeat it in one punch, but it would still take quite a bit of work. White Rabbit appeared with a sad face, wondering when he got stronger. Daun feels a strong power, which means he is stronger. The White Rabbit saw the live wolf. Wolves usually enter in groups of about 5. He wanted Daun to come down to fight and die, so his mouth was constantly provoking whether he could do it to prove that he had become strong. Said that the White Rabbit had hated him too much enhanced physical abilities. Now his effectiveness is 2.4 times, so now he can run 2.4 times faster. After that, Daun goes down fast. Go leave the White Rabbit. White Rabbit hates Daun. White Rabbit watched Daun's shadow disappear into the dungeon. He should have fought, or he would have been blown to pieces now that he had entered the tunnels. Daun breathed a sigh of relief. At least they were safe now. The place wasn't so bad. He built 7 tunnels just in case something happened. But when peeking from the tunnel, they saw where the wolf was. As if it had found its target, the 3 wolves were quite close to the distance between them. White Rabbit wondered what Daun was going to do. He would use the mud pellets he made combined with the power of a boar, wanting to stand up from a distance and throw them with a weight of 20 kilograms of mud. Daun really defeated the wolf this time, but he was not as lucky as before. Daun ran away and was attacked by another wolf. The White Rabbit was standing outside, encouraging the wolf to do well and tear him to pieces. But when the wolf came next to Daun, he dashed aside, spewing blood. He had just blocked one of his attacks. The horned pig is the highest level entity in the first stage of physical strength, and its defense is incomparable to all other monsters. No wonder it is able to block an attack from a plain wolf. The toolbar shows 6 seconds left with the power of the drill. He forgot there's a time limit, but 8 seconds is enough to take him down. The strategy is very simple. Daun using underground tunnels, he uses very dangerous guerrilla tactics like talking bushes and clearing monsters and safely clearing wolves. But they start to be more vigilant, and follow the herd. Young Daon used Poke as a scout, and he was still practicing, while the wolf was still waiting above. He became so strong that the wolf could no longer reach him. As before, White Rabbit couldn't believe what he was seeing was unfair. If he really wanted to kill, he could also handle 2 or 3 children at the same time. Young Daon's first step was successful. Now it's time for him to move on to the next stage. White Rabbit once said that only when killing the boss, the game will be finished. But one thing is for sure, he is not strong enough yet to take him down. That means he should find other players to cooperate. But you can't fight alone. Even though he is out, he doesn't know where to go now. What is he worried about? Why did the rabbit stop him from finding everyone? Jing Daun didn't know if there was another way. Seeing a poke on his shoulder, he asked if he knew where the other players were. He didn't understand what he was saying this time. Maybe it's a bit hard to Poku. He might still not be used to this forest, but he can't meddle too deep. It just put him in danger. But the thing is, Young Daon can't beat the boss himself. Young Daon thought it would be better if he built something like an observatory without wasting any more time. Digging the ground to start building first, Young Daon needs to lay a foundation in the form of an earthen wall is not difficult because he is used to it. Of course, without a binding material like cement, it will collapse very easily. Fortunately, he has a design secret from when he was in the cave. It took about 10 hours to finish the tower of the White Rabbit, standing in a faraway place managing a group of new people when he saw the tower. He didn't know what this was. He had never seen it before. Only one person could do this. White Rabbit quickly went to find Young Daon, warning him to stop building. These damn things can't stop Young Daon. White Rabbit could only find a way to prevent people from getting close to the last step. He wanted to kill Jing Daon, and everyone with a large group of monsters appeared at the same time. If this happened again, he would die. Luckily, the monsters weren't very smart. He was lucky that Young Daon was near the observatory. This rat appeared about 4 weeks ago since this dungeon was created. They are scary monsters. They ate everything and anything that came in their way. Even though Young Daon came down to check his calendar every day, he completely didn't realize that today was already the 4th week, so it was time to recreate the replica. That's why people don't not appear on the minimap now. Either they die, or they beat the boss and move on to the next stage. The minimap is a minimap of everything, including humans and monsters, that Young Daon received while clearing the tower. Due to the urgency of time, he couldn't wait any longer. You have to find everyone slowly and carefully. For some reason, he was scared constantly, and shouted while on Young Daon's shoulder. He assured him that they had plenty of maps, and that being able to avoid the camp would be fine, returning to everyone, even though they overcame all the hardships just to get here. But what greeted them was a huge monster. Everyone is confused how to defeat him. They thought they couldn't even give it a scratch. One of them, who was armed with a gun, rushed over and instantly died at the hands of the boss. This incident made everyone present even more frightened when the boss was about to attack everyone. Young Daon came to the rescue just as he remembered what Sung Woo taught him to kill monsters, and started attacking. Sung Woo once told him that everything has a weak point. Remember that the bigger they are, the harder it is to fall. The boss in front of him doesn't move. Young Daon saw the problem. Maybe he's trying to regenerate his body parts, but he won't let him do this. He couldn't miss this opportunity, but Young Daon made a big mistake. He hit the wrong position. Lost the golden time. The boss also finished. Everyone outside watching had no idea what kind of monster could go up against a boss. A girl says that everyone can't just stand outside and watch, saying that she rushed over to help Young Daon. Now that he's limited in time, he can't attack with force. Young Daon asked the girl to help buy time. He reminded her that it was okay, and told the girl to be careful. Next, Young Daon carried out an attack by causing damage to the center of his chest. Even though he didn't know it, the boss always covered the midpoint of his chest during the end of the attack. Young Daon guessed there must be something. While everyone was pouring damage into the boss's chest, he could see that it was earth. The boss's body was made of earth. If that was the case, then he would be able to handle it. Jing Daon already had enough information on this. Now he just needed to attack accurately, and with enough power, it was completely impervious to all forms of physics, which was why he needed more observation time to catch its weakness. Young Daon defeated the boss easily. After killing the boss, everyone starts the White Rabbit. Sung Woo and the others did, and Young Daon was happy, because if so, he could integrate into the group. The White Rabbit was angry about Daun's action of destroying the boss. It was screaming at everyone. It was ridiculous. The game isn't over yet. Let's move on to the next stage. Then the White Rabbit opened the gate for everyone. A girl advised everyone to leave. They had no choice. Everyone thanked Daun for helping them escape, then left one by one. Poke also chased him. The result was not what he expected. The system kept giving errors. White Rabbit said that it was because the dungeon system rejected him a week after rebuilding the dungeon. Daun thought he couldn't live like this for the rest of his life. The ground squirrels are still with him and the hole has not been remade. On the other hand, the observatory disappeared with a regeneration, meaning only the ground was reset and the bottom was not. Daun guesses that the creator of the dungeon system is not the creator of this world. He just needs to add his own system in the existing world, which means he can go to another area, even if he doesn't follow the requirements of the game. After all, Daun chose Death Mountain as a place to escape, overcoming many difficulties in the last monster. Daun still can't get out. The system warns again that the player must not leave stage 1. The White Rabbit explains that he will die if he leaves this area. The White Rabbit wanted Daun to give up his intentions, but he still couldn't. He passed by on the other side of the rat monster territory while the White Rabbit was talking. Daun descended through an invisible wall to the other side. He wondered if there was any difference. White Rabbit shouted at him to come back. Now Daun didn't want to come back. He called the White Rabbit if he wanted him to come back. He will come and pull him back. He found the White Rabbit can't pass through this area. It's a land they can't control. He thinks this place is most likely dividing the world into phases and he just left the place. Maybe he should check it out a bit to see if this place should reset like the other side. And what about the rats? About 2 weeks until the next reset, he'll try to build some observatories here. As an experiment according to the previous dungeon system, all the things he had built above ground would disappear 2 weeks after the reset started. But if this place didn't reset, then he wouldn't have any trouble with the terrain or beasts anymore, in which case he would definitely find a clue to get out of this place. Daun checked his inventory, but he received the core of a golem that can make anything before building it. He made a tunnel because if he built it on a high place it might attract the attention of many people. Daun thought that there was no need to make a human-shaped golem. He would create something convenient for traveling within the cave. Easily Daun first time trying to make an elephant. After several failed attempts, he created a 6-legged elephant that obeyed him. White Rabbit led a group of newcomers to fight the boss. Finally, everyone had reached this place. The final boss of Phase 1 tries and survives to the end, but when the White Rabbit takes everyone where there is no boss to fight. What was left in the room was a pile of mud. The White Rabbit panicked at what was going on, and the boss was gone. He thought only one person could do this. The damn bug again connected directly from the Mountain of Death. Daun took a week to make an elephant golem. It was a good decision on the Mountain of Death. Daun was contemplating what to make next. Now that he had a golem to ride, he should probably make another golem that specialized in attack walk on 2 legs, have 2 arms, so it could carry some heavy objects. Daun finally created the monkey he wanted to test his strength against a bunch of rat monsters and started attacking. The number strength of the monkeys is the same as the boss in stage 1, but instead of reducing the rat hordes they come in large numbers. There are too many monsters here. Daun thought that a large-scale attack was necessary. He created a large ball of clay and gave it to the monkey, ordering it to be thrown anywhere. A giant ball rolling over dead rats. Daun came up with a better way of using elephants as ammunition stores, so that when the monkey needed it, he could fetch it himself. Suddenly the rats attacked and fled in panic, and even poked Daun in the shoulder. He was afraid that regeneration was a regenerated dungeon. He didn't expect this reset to be so dangerous. Opened the minimap to check it. The map also started getting darker gradually around Phase 1 of the observatory. Daun also disappeared. Fortunately, the observatory near the Death Mountain was fine, meaning that the area around this area had not been reset, but the number of dots representing monsters gradually appeared more and more. Walls and gathered together to attack. Daun Turun ordered the elephants and monkeys to prepare. He would put the elephants down and the monkeys would go up. He started to feel a bit of an earthquake. He will deal with all of them monsters in other area after the reset is done. Gather here, he can't pass up this opportunity. Now is the best time to level up, making lots of dirt again. He orders the monkeys to throw everything at them. He had created a lump of earth to the right of the weight, to throw it down like a falling meteorite. but the number of rats was simply too great. Jingdown couldn't last long, and Boar's skill was his only skill that needed cooldown. But luckily young Dionata was in the observatory. A safe place too, because that he had calm, and now there was only one chance in life. The mice pile up again to get to the tower. He sends Poku to clear it, combined with his power from above. For a while young Daeon thinks about the rats, what he needed to build a tunnel while rebuilding. A boulder blocked the way. He didn't expect to find a rock here, so he couldn't handle it very well. Yet let's go back to the ground at the top of the mountain. The weather was cold and snowy. Even walking was getting difficult, but luckily with this weather, no rats came. Young Daeon thought that even though he couldn't continue digging underground, he could continue building the observatory. Also, there was no other way. If he continued digging and found rocks, it wouldn't work. Young Daeon needed to create a few more golems. His master-level earth skill strength was completely different before looking back at what he had. He could easily deal with the hateful wolves. But young Daeon shouldn't be overlooked. There might be a powerful monster appearing. He created a few more golems. He led his troops to the surface, but today it was colder than usual on the mountain, causing young Daeon to keep sneezing. He ordered the elephants to stop. Thinking of doing so, he built a dome engine on the back of an elephant. At this point, young Daeon thought that he could do a lot more with his skills than simple things. This was using the knowledge he was born with. Young Daeon had created something in the dungeon made by elephant golems. Young Daeon owns a heating system and a mobile home, and thanks to this invention, he received heat manipulation skills. They continued their journey through the mountain, where it was difficult for young Daeon to observe the situation around here. But looking back, he had risen quite high. Young Daeon felt lucky that the road here was not too bumpy and smooth. He got down from the elephant and looked around him from the high mountain. A feeling of comfort welled up in his heart. While looking around, he saw something strange in the distance. He decided to go closer to see what it was. He had no idea what area this was, why it was here, and the White Rabbit had never said anything about this building to him. He felt that this place looked a lot like the relics he saw often, but even Rabbit didn't know that meant it was built in the past, so this place was a place that pre-existed before dungeons appeared. Young Daeon didn't know what to do, nor did he know if his guess was right. He stepped inside, then was attracted by a strange statue, he thought. The ruins of the statue looked like they were made of stone, even though the stone looked very strange, but was kind enough to make young Daeon move closer to get a better look at it. He was suddenly attacked. He didn't expect that he would be alive in an emergency. He could only summon a monkey to help. The two monkeys that were charging at the two were blown away by the stone statue. Jingdown could do nothing but find a way to run. He ran near the mountain of death and stopped to rest. Their attacks had absolutely no effect on the stone statue. Young Daeon felt lucky to only lose one golem. Since he couldn't find it on the map, and since this was outside the territory, it couldn't be the final boss's room. Jingdown thought the ruins must be the reason why rats dare not appear near you. Sure, there is a secret here. He will find it a month later. Death Mountain Peak in the land is filled with boulders. There is a moonlight sculptor, young Daeon, after tasting defeat by a mysterious monster. He had prepared his moment carefully about revenge, and to explain what happened, we go back to a month ago. Someone accidentally dropped him. He had come here to make more golems, but he didn't expect to find such an unexpected item. The cruel truth he had learned from the previous game was that Earth couldn't win against rock. He needed a weapon powerful enough to match the statue. The number of golems and get stone crushing skills, King Young Daeon learned how to use this skill to destroy the earth, combined with skills. The newly acquired stone, even though it was the same material, what he had just made more difficult, seemed to have turned to stone. He needed to crush more rocks as they were, and regenerate them with the destroyed earth. But he and the golem would lose if they fought one-on-one. And since these monsters could fly, it was hard to find a favorable environment in an open field. But if he turned it into a head-to-head match, there would be a fluke. But if it rose into the sky, he wasn't sure. He couldn't think of any approach to it. He even thought that making a tunnel with his current rock-breaking skill would take a year. He suddenly got an idea. From the beginning, he designed the golem to be an elephant, but because he needed it to be a monkey. Now what he needed was mobility to fight enemies, so problem solved. He only needed to make the golem possessing that ability. Young Daeon turned around to Poke. He and talked about his intentions. A new design for the high-mobility golem, the Ford Torian golem, was born along with the new steed golem. He turned his elephant into an ostrich now that he has successfully built a cavalry team. He was the one who set up the formations and guided the golems to fight. In this battle, everything is in his hands. Eventually, he caught it, and his rock-breaking skills through this battle increased to level 4. At the same time, a monkey came to find the white rabbit and asked if the white rabbit was okay. This monkey baboon is the manager of the dungeon. Manager level 2. Stage 1, Stage 2 is a baboon, so it can be said that the baboon is the owner of the second dungeon, one level higher than the white rabbit. And unlike the unknown baboon is the name in it. White Rabbit scolded why this ugly person had come. He still greeted warmly, asking why he came to such an ordinary place. Baboon asked White Rabbit if he did a good job. The confused White Rabbit didn't know what he was talking about. He silently wiped the sweat and said he always tried his best. In recent days, it's not like twice as many people have survived. The baboon, he asked how lazy the White Rabbit was. He thought he didn't notice because he was stupid. He blamed the mistakes made by young Daun. In this conversation, the baboon assumed that the White Rabbit was lying and dishonest. The White Rabbit always denied it, and even asked him if he could find such an honest rabbit here, until the baboon said one was left, which made the White Rabbit speechless. Returned to young Daun after defeating the monsters he collected. Deep within the shrine filled with the bones of all kinds of creatures, there were too many rotting corpses here. Young Daun Turun should be more careful. The golem walking in front stepped on the flying arrow trap above. He didn't expect that there would be a trap here. But he left the golem standing in front. No matter what, the golem wouldn't get hurt or take any damage. He ordered the golems to destroy the wall. Arrows shot, as he thought when he destroyed the wall, flying arrows would be nothing to worry about. He rested for a while before continuing to take this chance. Jing Daun released arrows which stuck in the golems' bodies. Moss, it's just that he doesn't know how long this place has been abandoned. While young Daun was observing his surroundings, Poku suddenly screamed and ran into a hole in the wall. Young Daun then ordered the golem to break down the wall. A large door appeared and he guessed this was the final boss's room. He knew he had a feeling that this last boss was dead now. Opened the door and inside was a huge skeleton. He wanted to run back to eat, but was stopped. He was afraid of danger. Now he understood that it wasn't looking for the door, it was looking for bones to eat. The system announced that since he had passed all the challenges, his reward would be to inherit this dragon tomb as the owner of the mausoleum. He would have many room systems saying that this was a rare quest, and he should be honored to accept this quest. In fact, this room system would soon die because having only one soul was the only thing, but could feel that this life would end soon, understanding the situation. But he had no plans to stay trapped in this place. The reason he refused was because he wanted to go home. It was a place he thought about every day. Young Daun Turun is doing everything he can to survive in this remote place. The system says that if that is the reason, then he has more reasons to inherit this dragon mausoleum. Once he becomes the owner of the dragon mausoleum, he will gain the dragon's power. It contains the power needed for him to reach his goal. When he gains the power, there is no place he can't go. Even in another dimension, he can still go, however, when creating a portal. He would need a sacrifice, which the tomb system had told him that he was currently the entity destined to become the scapegoat. On the other hand, the White Rabbit is cut off by the baboon taking on the task of finding him, because he was originally a scapegoat that had to be destroyed. The White Rabbit followed the trail he left behind to find young Daun. Young Daun tries to use his ability to open the gate. The system tells him that in the meantime he won't be able to go anywhere. He felt the need to create at least 2 portals to be able to teleport between them. This was a matter of level 1, after he had mastered the skill, so wherever he wanted to be. Young Daun summoned the space portals. The gates linked together now that he entered one gate. He might be able to get out. He tries to follow the words of the system. Yes, he pokes. He sees that and does the same thing, but it doesn't pass. The system reminds him he has to let him through. Young Daun felt great that if that was the case, then it would mean he would be able to summon golems anywhere, and it would be better for him to use those gates to escape when in danger. After all, it wouldn't be bad to use them anyway. The system is called Alpha. Young Daun asked Alpha to go outside for a while to feel comfortable. Outside there was a cloud-covered land. Young Daun wondered if Alpha knew what Alpha was. Alpha didn't know because she was only interested in being in the tomb. Jing Daun was a bit nervous and saw it was called the end of the world. But looking like a flat area, he started to use his stone-crushing skill to build a ladder down below the tomb. The system stared at him with surprise after surprise. The White Rabbit is on its way to find young Daun. He was very tired and hungry. His health and satiety stats were dropping fast, but there was still a long way to go to find him. White Rabbit didn't know why he had to live in this cold and hungry and very tired form, how long it had been since his salary was cut. He only has one right to kill, while at the beginning of the game, river energy that is obtained from using the right to kill will be given to the manager. However, his current appearance is due to Jingdao's mistake. The White Rabbit was almost eaten by a rat. He was very scared and lost his strength more and more. His strength would disappear and the rats would treat him as food. The stats dropped again, rendering the White Rabbit unable to fly. At this time, the White Rabbit realized that everything was over. A large number of rats ran to attack the rabbit. It had to find a place to hide. The White Rabbit quickly ran to the tower that Daun had built. He used the last of his strength to fight, even though the White Rabbit looked rather weak. It was the manager of the first stage. The White Rabbit's master plan was to drag the rats up to the top of the observatory and defeat the rats one by one as soon as they exited the narrow passage thanks to his superior tactics. The White Rabbit had the advantage as a result, the White Rabbit defeating the rats, even though the rabbit had lost the ability to organize. However, all of the White Rabbit's stats quickly dropped to one no longer having the strength to continue the battle. As soon as it fell, it was saved by Daun. When the White Rabbit wakes up, there is a pile of food in front of him, but can only eat with the condition of betting Daun. When the White Rabbit finds out that Daun is the successor to the Dragon Tomb, he is very surprised. Daun accidentally becomes the owner of this tomb because the White Rabbit is an experienced person, so he chooses to be with him. White Rabbit, holding a bag of potatoes on his lap while eating and calling, had a very strange taste, asking the manager why he came to this place, breaking the rules of all kinds of miscellaneous things. The White Rabbit frowned and told everything that had happened. First stage management had changed. The rabbit said something about a baboon, but the main issue for Daun's concern was whether the White Rabbit had come to catch him. White Rabbit heard him ask and said quickly, decided then we'll join Daun. This is an opportunity for the two of you to collaborate on hearing this. Alpha wants to join the conversation. He heard the mention of Alpha as he was surprised it was clear the dragon symbol was this Earth Day tomb. Alpha told them to go to the altar first. The rabbit panicked and asked if he wanted to sacrifice it. Alpha said it was a stupid rabbit, don't poke your nose. Daun explained to the White Rabbit earlier that he was also surprised. He was sure he would be even more surprised when he went inside. It was right the room where Dragon's skeleton was. After the White Rabbit had finished eating and had his fill, the White Rabbit was appointed middle manager. It was great that the system said, acknowledging the White Rabbit's experience, which was more worthy than his previous position. The White Rabbit promises to show loyalty to its owner. On the other hand, the baboon ponders why he suddenly lost connection with the White Rabbit. White Rabbit loves Daun's potatoes, so he keeps asking for potatoes. Daun kept calling it potatoes, so the White Rabbit ate it voraciously. Daun said, if you work, you can live if you eat. White Rabbit is forced to adapt. Only the warm room is called a fireplace and can be used for farming or cooking poke rice, nowhere to be seen. White Rabbit asks Daun if he will throw it away when he pokes you, hearing that he looks angry. With Daun's playful expression reminding them to have a habit of saving money, but doing so will hurt the golem. The scene made him think of a good act. He sent the White Rabbit to come and had a job to do. He ordered the White Rabbit to collect the bones and crush them to fertilize the plants. Using them as fertilizer would be very effective. Living with Daun, the rabbit, is much more difficult, but the rabbit also has fun times. For example, Daun invites the rabbit to eat delicious food that the rabbit has never eaten before, including the use of the meat of a one-horned wild boar. In stage 1 ruins the baboon, surprised that the final boss can be found. The sight in front of him right now was the pile of golem core mud that the White Rabbit and Daun had just obtained from the final boss. The White Rabbit was happy when the baboons were eaten. After completing the task, the White Rabbit had set up a gate for the owner. Both of them walked through the gate to the system mausoleum, reminding two people of wasting life energy. While Daun went to the forest for nectar, he saw a group of adults bullying young people boy. But he was inconvenient to help. A few moments later, they were attacked by a mob of monsters. Even though the Dark MDs were the weakest beasts of the dungeon, they were very cunning and vicious. If he looked down, it would eat people like he was chewing a blade of grass. Forgot the way. But a chance to break free self has come since ancient times. Humans have always found hidden strength within their body when facing difficulties or challenges, thereby regaining their life from death. Daun thought like Sung Woo. While he was still lost in his thoughts, a boy fell on his lap. It was a boy who was bullied. Before now he was always screaming for help with Jung Daon. Daun quickly defeated the monsters surrounding the boy. But after the battle, he was very short on sugar. Luckily, the boy took out a lot of cookies and carbonated soft drinks from the bag. Young Daon was shocked and couldn't believe his eyes, with a life as difficult as it is now boring in a necessary place like a cellar for sweets. It was something that helped him relax, but there was a pity that he was always hanging on to materials, so young Daon's recent interest was in finding materials. This was why he had listened to the white rabbit going to this forest to find nectar after rescuing the boy. The boy always followed him. Young Daon threatens that following him will be dangerous, but the boy follows as he says. Young Daon knew that the kid went to the shop when he was called, so he had a lot of candy. Daun saw Young Daon go down build a house in the blink of an eye. The kid admired like skills in the blink of an eye. It made a building down, explained that it's not the same as the skill collecting skills. But until now, Dongman still don't know what the kid's skill is. Jing Daon helped him find the information board. The skill of the curse is God eats. If the stomach is full, then strength will be born. Body capacity will double when satiety reaches 100%, strengthens the body, similar to the skill Wild Boar's Vigor. But the boy says he has never used it. Never reaches 100 because he is always hungry. Jing Daon sorrow for that boy. Okay, these 3 days he will definitely raise Daunman into a wonderful teenager. Jung Daon prepared the table for the boy. The food he wanted the boy to eat naturally. The white rabbit's current state was very sad, was taken by Young Daon to find rock salt. In the foggy night, the white rabbit scolded Young Daon for being arrogant. Even though it was disguised, the white rabbit was still very insecure. He was afraid that if he met a baboon, he would die. Now, don't know where to look for rock salt. He used his powers to communicate with the white rabbit. He told him to come back if he couldn't find him. It was dark anyway. He also prepared pork belly, which he liked to eat only if there was rock salt. The dish would taste better. In no time, they actually had something more powerful than that. At first, he helped the boy train by catching monsters for him to fight despite being injured. Both of them finally reached their goal. Daunman knew that Young Daon was looking for salt. The boy showed him where it was, a place he used to pass in the middle of the desert. After a long time in the hot desert, everyone was tired. Young Daon's face turned red. It was harder than he imagined. Maybe he misheard why he left forever, and still can't get out of this sandy place. The boy's feet also sunk deep in the sand. Young Daon set up the gate, summoning the golem soldiers to appear. The kid was startled by the fire in front of these animals like tanks, plus this was so cool. Young Daon told him now as the last training session. She conveyed everything she needed to know, for which she thanked him. He would study hard. Young Daon praised him as a bright and intelligent kid who would definitely do well. It would have been nice to go out with, but now everyone can do things differently on their own. Golem for a long time has been tired of running around blaming Young Daon for forgetting him. He laughed at the other participants, but seeing the white rabbit's current form must be very happy. He put the white rabbit on top of the golem to rest, when the white rabbit above his eyes constantly looked around. Then actually found the sea of salt it was looking for. Everyone is harvesting salt to bring back everyone happy. Young Daon will have salt to make a delicious meal. Goodbye to Daunman. Suddenly, the mausoleum system speaks to one to keep the system. Daunman seeing his abilities. He chose him as the support dragon. With this role, the Daunman can continue to eat even if he is full. From there, he will increase in strength even more. As everyone was talking, the scorpion beasts came and surrounded them. The Daunman panicked and didn't know what to do and kept calling Young Daon. This time, he wasn't going to step in to kill them. As a passing test for the Daunman, the kid believed what he heard. He wanted him to attack with dozens of monsters alone. Young Daon said this is a passing test. However, be careful with the scorpion's poison. It doesn't matter if he is poisoned. Young Daon can purify him. The white rabbit also spoke to reassure him not to worry, that they weren't very strong, so even if they were stabbed, they wouldn't die despite the fear of taking up arms. Remember, the purpose of your practice is the story that Young Daon used. To tell the reason why he became strong, had to train so hard, was to return to his previous world. Even though Young Daon was worried about the boy, he took out a pot and started a fire because the Daunman fought better than he thought, and even Scorpion's grasp was delicious. The battle of smelling the food is getting fiercer. He wants to finish it quickly so he can eat with the other two. In the end, the Daunman is to complete the task given to him to destroy all those monsters. Daunman passes through the exam in forest. Starting there will be a nearby tribute so he can join them. Young Daun gave the boy a scarf as a parting gift. The child was leaving, and she missed him a bit after leaving. He will know that there is no better place than home. The White Rabbit asked young Daon if he really considered this place home. The system wanted him to treat this shrine as a home. He started working OK time to do some homework while observing System Alpha's new owner deduces that a boy named Young Daon has become the new owner of Dragon Temple. He doesn't know if he's a great character or not. Firstly, if he inherits this shrine, it's just luck. Alpha has been waiting for me with the thought that this is the infinite flow of fate. He looked back at the temple's trap. After a long time, Young Daon's highly concentrated image was a truly awesome baboon. On the other hand, felt that not only the boss, but also the one-horned boar were seriously reduced, but he didn't know the reason why life energy needed quality over quantity. After training survivors with monsters, the effect might be better, he thought. Those who cleared stage 1 in such a bad state were useless people. Maybe he should come out first on the opposite side of the Death Mountain. Young Daon was working hard on making a ladder. He stood on the overhanging cliff, feeling like he was playing an adventure game to prevent unexpected accidents. Young Daon accompanied the ostrich golem. He regularly went up and down to cut the cliff. Suddenly the system indicated that he had entered stage 4. Young Daon was flustered, but was quickly enveloped in the mist. He almost lost his life due to the poisonous mist. Luckily, the golem saved him. He put on a mask and wanted to go downstairs to see the situation Alpha asked about how to cross thousands of poison clouds with just a piece of cloth. Of course, he didn't use refining skills to get a simple mask. Of course, what he did was not just a job that started with a big heart. Among the skills called purification, when the level reaches a certain standard, it will be able to gain experience with poison, but at some point, the pesky skills that will be removed will be fixed. At this level, it was a situation where one had to work hard, so he had no choice. Due to the increasing number of poisonous clouds, the simple gas mask he wore as an effective method of protection, but also had the real purpose after that was to directly purify the poison cloud purify. Then he cut the rock. He kept repeating these two actions over and over again. Maybe for someone, this is a very difficult job, but Young Daon didn't feel that way. He finally cleared the sea of poison clouds in front of him. There was a wide view. He was enjoying watching the birds flying. There was an eagle in the distance flying towards him, suddenly attacking him. Luckily, the ostrich ran fast to escape then. While Young Daon got off not noticing the eagle following the stairs he built to the stage he was living in, it went to the Dragon Temple and destroyed the temple. White Rabbit was looking for some grass, and when he saw a fire in front of him, he quickly told him. Young Daon gathers an army of golems to prepare to attack. He controls the golems to shoot bullets, but their stamina is too great. The bullets have no effect on him. White Rabbit advises him to find something sharp for those with a lot of stamina. It's the best thing to handle them. Young Daon descended, searching his inventory for the iron skewers combined with the attacking aura of the boar. The iron skewers hit the eagle's wings but then fell again. Indeed, Young Daon's strength was still lacking, but the eagle was even more aggressive than before, returning to the temple without attacking it back. Alpha noticed something strange. If she was hers, then she didn't need to attack the shrine. Maybe the monster was aiming for Lord Ortia. Young Daon down, thought it and realized the correct direction to attack was the boss room. White Rabbit confirmed the altar was the target. The altar was the place where all of the relic's life energy concentrated in the monsters guarding the border. Instinctively coveted life energy after determining the direction of the monster's attack. Young Daon quickly used an ostrich to go there, leaving behind the rest of the golems. The White Rabbit used the potato field he planted earlier to tie up the monster's legs next. He built a wall at a long distance, hard to achieve high damage. But this distance was enough for him. Young Daon used a shard from the temple as a trap to attack the monster. A series of arrows flew out of the wall and shot at the monster. But Young Daon didn't expect that the number was limited and needed time to reset. If he continued like this, he would definitely die. While listening to Young Daon say that there was a possibility that he would die in this battle, Alpha was worried that he would not be able to protect the shrine to the end. During his evasive move, he made a wrong move, and luckily got crushed by the monster. The White Rabbit led the formation of the golems just in time when one of the monkeys reached out and caught it just in time. The White Rabbit apologized to Young Daon for being late. Young Daon ordered the golem soldiers to leave wearing wings. The monster wings that the other two were about to wear at Young Daon's feet, and the others focused on one point. This time it really failed. He was also swallowed up by the monster in his mouth. The pitiful white rabbit didn't believe the truth, but right after that, for some reason, the monster let him go. Young Daun then screamed and flew away as the monster wanted to eat him. He took it out of his inventory and threw it in his mouth, knowing it was rock salt. He thought it was pepper, but he didn't expect it to jump when he met salt. He then told the white rabbit how he went to stage 4 on the cliff, how he met a monster there. Even the white rabbit didn't know it was stage 4. Underneath, if the poison cloud resets, it's fine. But if it's poisoned before reset, it's hard to answer Young Dawn's thoughts. For example, if it gets here again somehow, he has to quickly build up a defensive method first. Young Daon needs to reset something that is the defense of the temple. But since the life energy has decreased, it's very hard Jing down. Wondering what to do next from Young Daon, knowing that the baboon has the ability to channel life energy into the altar. He made the decision to go to his shrine to rob the altar. The white rabbit couldn't believe what he was hearing. What exactly is he talking about? Young Daon determined that the white rabbit heard correctly, that if it was a place where the temple's life energy was concentrated, it was like a battery of life energy. They would come and take everything and make them wait. The white rabbit thought if there was no altar, the baboons would be a really sad good idea. Young Daon assigned the task of pouring oil and setting fire to the surrounding area to attract the baboons to come. Now the white rabbit did it, and he didn't expect it would one day come out like this. He thought of how to start a fire to lure the baboons out of the temple according to plan. When the fire was lit, the baboons immediately ran there. He didn't know why strange things kept happening. Young Daon took the opportunity to sneak into the temple to carry out his plan. He didn't expect that what he was looking for would be revealed right before his eyes. Maybe it was because he was the final boss. He saw a sparkling purple gem on Alpha's altar, telling him it was life energy. The altar has been modified to be able to use strengthening magic without having to become a mage. Although Alpha doesn't want to admit it, this is the method the dragons eventually came up with to restore this altar. Young Daon opens the gate for golems to come and take it undetected. He also destroys this shrine. After robbing the altar, Young Daon gets down, not knowing what to do next. Alpha reminds him to offer the gem as a sacrifice first. If that's the case, then he won't be able to use the energy Alpha word booster as long as you absorb half of it. Brings gems to Artie's altar. He wondered if it would come back to life, but this wasn't enough, as the life energy wasn't fully concentrated here though. So this much could help them restore the shrine. Starting with the repair of the shrine, the tool panel appeared, and he got his first achievement appeared. When he destroyed the ruins, now appeared again, but strangely the prize is not there. White Rabbit laughs that everything related to Young Daon is broken. Once again the toolbar appears. He had obtained the achievement of Explorer of Ruins. His reward was the transfer of ownership of the altar. Alpha rejoices that the altar of death has turned into an altar of life. The altar is now theirs. They are very happy that after a while, they have finally completed the renovation of the temple, because the monster might return. Young Daon set a trap to wait for it to arrive. The White Rabbit and Young Daon had reached the cliff he cut. They needed reinforcement to deal with the increased monsters, was an ability based on the number of shrines he had, and it came with his choice of options. But the life energy used also meant that the stat increase also increased the reinforcement. The target that Young Daon chose was an arrow trap. Then the real monster appeared as Young Daon had predicted, with the enhanced arrow trap prepared beforehand. The monster this time was injured by the arrows, then followed the cliff to climb up, this time being poured hot oil by the White Rabbit. Upstairs, the White Rabbit tells Young Daon that he has caught him, and he wants to come down to see him. Young Daon needs the White Rabbit to make sure that he is dead. If he doesn't die, he will come back. If he comes back, it will be his soul. Young Daon praised the hard work of strengthening the rabbit, actually much more effective where Young Daon was cutting the mountain. Suddenly a deep hole appeared in it. There was a gap that gave off a light inside a dark cave emitting light. It seemed they had to go there, so Alpha reminded him to don't take it lightly. He could already see the danger lurking. Without finishing the sentence, Young Daon summoned the golem. He really didn't try to listen to it, so Young Daon went down through the gap and found that the light emitted was something circular. Looking further, he saw a monster lying in a pile of glowing things. Apparently the White Rabbit said that the monster is immortal. He can't die. This damn rabbit gave Young Daon such a headache because this monster is immortal. Or why can't he die there? The White Rabbit didn't realize a dangerous situation was happening here. He wanted to get down to show off his achievement to him and claim the prize of the barbecue. When he reached the place, he saw the sight in front of the white rabbit's eyes, which was very scary, seeing his prize which had not been seen. The white rabbit was being scolded by Young Daon. He can't do business properly. Young Daon opened the gate to go to the side of the perfected trap. He put the gate here, and the gate right on the trap for the flying arrows to attack the monsters. This time they really succeeded in killing the monsters. After killing these monsters, the toolbar Young Daon continuously showed achievement. The Eagle Hunter achievement? The reward is to be as brave as an eagle. The second achievement is to find a flying bird with arrows. The next prize is to see the target in the face. Although this is not a combat skill, it has to be tried once down. When holding the up arrow to fire, the dot appears for him to see that the white object appears to be the place representing the firing point. Young Daeon's archery technique wasn't very good. As soon as he became proficient, it would be invaluable to use today. They both had a big feast of Griffios. The meat of the eagle is a combination of a bird and a tiger. The whole body he eats, especially the wings and hind legs, is also part of the bird. Young Daeon thought a little more firepower would be good. Alpha said that with the help of the sunstone, the firepower will increase. What Alpha was referring to was the glowing rock in Eagle Cave as mentioned. It was a rock that contained solar energy, since that destructive light was always emitted. It was a precious treasure. And then, as time went on today, a little special, he had dug a ladder down the Young Daeon mountain, down which only took 2 months to break the cliff. At times like this, he couldn't be more negligent. He needs to make a safe place first while Jingdown is recovering the stone cave. White Rabbit leads the golems to head out. He orders them to explore around here, but after a while the White Rabbit runs back. Scared, the White Rabbit says the destination is being attacked by players. Young Daeon quickly goes there to save the golem. The current player who is in the bowling alley must be strong if he doesn't get there quickly. The golem will soon be taken down by now that the other players may see it. He was directly hidden by the White Rabbit. He didn't expect the real player to be under the picture. Young Daon ran in front of the golem, running behind, making everyone show their misunderstanding. They said in horror that there were people being chased and killed by him. The golems thought that if they knew the fact that this golem belonged to them, they would be angry or not. The White Rabbit said that they didn't misunderstand him as a support person, but anyway, Young Daon was very happy to see players here. Then first Young Daon ran away with a golem like that. They all saw the golems chasing him. He only guessed that he lured the golems to save everyone. Young Daon kept receiving misunderstandings. This event also revealed the existence of the cave. One person was worried about him, so he ran to see the person saw the golem entering the new ruins, but the person didn't enter, feeling a bit embarrassed. But because he was too scared he couldn't enter, to make sure he came back and reported the incident to an old man. He tells them that their ability to deal with them is a bit troublesome. He decides to leave this job to the new recruits. He was worried that it would be dangerous for them. He insisted that it was dangerous to let them go. Intermediates or newcomers were people full of passion and ambition. Young Daon and follow Poku's instructions to find an inhabited village. But before entering the village, they are attacked by a humanoid skeleton. At first there were only a few that he was easy to destroy, but then there were a lot more. They wanted to use numbers to beat him. The White Rabbit also rushed into battle to help Young Daon. He praised him too. The former manager's strength didn't seem to fade. White Rabbit wanted him to take a closer look. This was his successor's battle prowess. Well done. White Rabbit. Seeing these things seemed to see these things were easier to handle than he thought. But when he came back he saw the White Rabbit asking for help. He could be out for blood. Whenever it's time to help out this dead, Young Daon gets down, grabs his bunny ears and runs away. But 2 people are shot by one of them, causing him to fall to the ground in the Chippy village. The aura of a leader returns to Young Daon, being helped by another person to defeat them. The person comes to ask about the situation, and Young Daon realizes it is Sung Woo. He takes him back to the village to meet his old comrades. Everyone was so touched that they burst into tears. The village chief came out from inside to ask about the situation in the dungeon. There was a man who was burning with weakness. He thought he would die here, but this man's skill was a bit special. He had a skill called clairvoyance, a keen eye. It allowed him to see things clearly. That person was village chief Chong Suk, and he was currently appraising Young Daon. Young Daon didn't understand what he saw. Why did the village head look at him like that? The village chief suddenly showed a smile and said, "It was good to meet you. The welcoming party will take place in the Headman Village Square." They muttered under their breath about whether this standard setting was dangerous or not dangerous. The arrangement is a bit ambiguous. He wants Seong-woo to be there first, he will come later. The White Rabbit appears to tease young Daeon, who seems to be meeting his comrades now after being away for days. She was crying her nose and eyes were wet, so she seemed to be in a better mood now. He thought this was not the time for nonsense, he should focus on observing this village. For a moment, Young Daeon was curious that this weak bamboo fence could also stop monster attacks. All of these dilapidated houses seemed to be deliberately careless. White Rabbit said no, that the stage can't be captured on time, punishment will come. Picture 1 in stage 1 of being attacked by a bunch of rats. Punishment of stage 4 is lack of food. Absolutely nothing to eat. Even the ingredients won't be available. In the square village head gathers everyone. He welcomes young Daeon to the village. When he stands next to young Daeon, he sees that he has smooth skin and round appearance proves that this boy brought lots of food by welcoming him to the village. He wanted to say something when he was in the community. He had to share food with everyone. Of course, not all, so don't regret it without thinking much. Young Daeon brought illegal eagle meat to everyone. Everyone there was shocked and horrified at young Daeon. The village head deliberately misled people that he took it when he was about to die. He was afraid that he would threaten his village head that night. Young Daeon returned to the tent with Sung-woo and the others. For a moment, he couldn't stand this place with no blankets, no shoes, or cramped and dirty tent after finishing data entry. Young Daeon launched life-crafting mode. He used floor heating skill, now bidding farewell to cold. Everyone in the tent is very excited. Young Daeon says it's too early to be surprised at this time. Special route officially started. He makes tea for everyone to use. This is tea taken from the leaves of the scream just before morning. A boy in the team is happy, didn't expect there will be a day where he can drink tea. Here the noise of the tea ceremony breaks the silence of the tent, and our young Daeon tries to protect them. A flash of good memories secretly gives him strength. Young Daeon doesn't want people to remember the broken basement, he wants people to remember the happy past. The White Rabbit suddenly ran out screaming to stop it too much. What everyone saw was not right. The leaves screamed. It caused the dirt inside the body to flow out through tears when everyone saw the White Rabbit. They drew their weapons and prepared to fight. They shouted this name. The supporters didn't lose a finger here. Luckily, Young Daeon stopped them in time. Young Daeon explains to everyone what has happened to him so far, from being able to make things out of the ground to making rabbits his ally. Seong-woo asks if they can become dragon emissaries like him. Jingdaun also asked whether it was true that Sung-woo had been living well recently, as if he had just discovered something extraordinary. He opens the gate, taking out all his food reserves when he has a chance to remember that Sung-woo wants to be the messenger for the dragon. Alpha asks if he will tell everyone that they will serve Lord Ortia Jung Daeon. Asks in return if Alpha is capable, if he has that ability, would definitely come in very handy in this dungeon. Sung-woo also begins to convince Alpha that good communication might reduce the threat of the enemy, while the gate's ability can help him manage his comrades who are left behind. He didn't want to experience the feeling of losing comrades again. Young Daeon was deeply moved by those words, but Alpha refused. Most likely, of course, the conditions were necessary. But the biggest problem here was the limited number of people receiving the current capacity. Dragon Messenger could not add people indefinitely. When he needed to do it one more time, everyone gathered in the hall provided by the village head to distribute food from Young Daeon. Below, he shows off his professional knife skills, making beautiful cuts of meat. He thought that even though it was a bit heavy on the body, the show was quite popular among the masses. Young Daeon also expressed his admiration for his performance. He explained that his knife had been perfected. Young Daeon thought that one day he would find an extra knife to compete with him. Taking the opportunity that people grilling meat needed salt, Young Daeon sold salt. Everyone who came was shocked by the huge pile of salt, but they didn't know what to exchange. In the dungeon, money has no value, so he went down offering a very simple transaction exchange, the enhanced item for a cup of salt, as long as he can strengthen. It won't be a problem that everyone can take home a pinch of salt. Some people are starting to hesitate. They really wanted salt, but changing the upgraded equipment was a bit difficult for everyone. One of the group members came out, then he took out an upgraded item that can be exchanged for salt. He is the one standing here. You will know how to get the upgraded equipment after entering the 4th floor. It proves that these are capable people. Each of them, 1 or 2 unused upgrade guns they have. But considering the difficulty experienced in return, kinda regret. The salt is good, but the upgraded equipment is low level. Young Daeon feels sorry. He knows for a fact that everyone here thinks so. Now everyone's hearts are happy. but as long as one person buys, the rest will definitely follow. The truth that young Daun managed to sell a lot of village salt has been heard by people from other villages. Hearing the news, he thought if he continued selling salt like this, people would like him even more than before. He decided to buy all the salt and distribute it to everyone. But the village head 1,000 times did not expect young Daun's salt to be so much when he showed him the salt he left behind. The village head was astonished he had to use such a large amount of upgraded equipment in exchange for young Daun. The story of Skeleton Warrior begins with a background in one tense night on a mountain on the southern edge of Xi'an, Shanxi province. There is a man named Cheo Wubek, demonic cult's young cult leader, surrounded by several people who are members of the vicious blood squad who want to kill him. Cheo Wubek did not expect that he would end up being betrayed by those closest to him, who had spent a long time with him. One of the squad members said that they did this because they felt that the demonic cult needed a change, and one of the ways to make that happen was to kill him. Cheo Wubek, who heard that, couldn't help but laugh and say that their only goal was to kill him, and that the pledge of allegiance they had made was just a bunch of nonsense. Annoyed by Cheo Wubek's words, the squad member ignored his words and then swung her sword ready to kill Cheo Wubek. Seeing the squad member's action, in his mind, Cheo Wubek wondered if that place would be the place where he would die. Not wanting to end up in vain as a son of the leader of demonic cult, he would show them all how apples don't fall far from the tree. Instantly, a purple aura enveloped Cheo Wubek's body, and by brandishing his sword, he was ready to fight with all of them. But who would have thought? Before the fight happened, suddenly, a man fell right on top of his head and fell on Cheo Wubek, breaking his collarbone. As a result of the incident, Cheo Wubek eventually lost consciousness, while the man who was only wearing pants was moaning in pain on his butt, and was surprised when he found out that he was in a place he didn't know at all. The man's name is Kim Sojin. After 4 years of study at the teacher's college, 2 years of compulsory military training, and 2 years of preparation for the teacher certification exam, at the age of 28, he finally passed the exam. He didn't intend to study education at all, but he did it all because he wanted to earn a stable and decent income. But not as he imagined. The longer the house price inflation beat the increase in wages. Therefore, all he could do was to multiply the money hundreds of thousands of times, that is, by playing stocks and crypto. One day, bad luck happened to Kim Sojun, where he lost 140,358,383 won. At that time, along with a female teacher and his students, they were all on a field trip to the royal tomb. The female teacher seemed to have difficulty organizing the students and asked Kim Sojun to help her. But she was surprised when she saw Kim Sojin's creepy look, where he was very shocked by the loss he got. Wherever he was, Kim Sojin did not let go of his cell phone at all, and just stared at it with annoyance. While going to the toilet, he accidentally saw one of his students enter a room that was marked with a no-entry sign. Feeling lazy, he inevitably followed the boy and entered the room. When inside, he was very surprised to see the pillars that had cracked, and also quite a lot of cobwebs. He did not expect that there would be such a room in the royal tomb, which is known to be always kept clean. Then he saw his student go to another room, and immediately chased him and caught him. The child named Yu Deokwa, from Class 2B, who is known as a quiet student. Surprisingly, Yu Deokwa told Kim Sojun to get out of that place immediately, and said if he was there, then he would fall into a very terrible curse. Hearing those words, Kim Sojun obviously didn't believe it and asked to go with him. But suddenly his words stopped after seeing something shining brightly. Kim Sojun was very surprised when he saw so many gold coins in front of him. He slowly approached the coins, and bit one of them to check the authenticity of the coin, which turned out to be pure gold. Unlike Kim Sojun, Yu Deokwa was seen taking one of the coins and observing it. Just as he predicted, inside the coins there were unpleasant souls living there. Then his attention was distracted by the sound of Kim Sojun laughing very loudly like he was planning something. Having suffered a considerable loss, Kim Sojun was unable to think clearly and pocketed one of the coins into his pants pocket. Not wanting to miss this amazing opportunity, he opened his jacket as a place for the coins. Seeing his teacher's behavior, Yu Deokwa tried to warn him not to do that because it could make him cursed. With a terrible look, Kim Sojun seemed to underestimate his student's words and said that right now his life was like hell, where this world was a hell without money. Just as he finished his words, the ground he was on suddenly shattered and made him fall in. While falling, Kim Sojun heard a strange whispering voice that said the person who disturbed the king's rest deserved to be cursed, and he would step through the world, face trials, and live with the dead for the rest of his life. Kim Sojun shouted very loudly, and soon a tab appeared that said if he had been resurrected as a player and obtained the necromancer character, and he had the skeleton warrior skill. Not only that, on the tab there is a warning if the first skeleton underling can only be revived as a skeleton once he personally kills the target. After that, Kim Sojun fell and hit someone who was none other than Chio Woobaek. He then felt an oddity where he thought that his pants were very loose, and his hands became smaller, which made him look younger. After checking his condition, he realized that there were already several people staring at him with strange looks. When he looked to the side, he was surprised to find a dead person with a broken neck due to his actions. Kim Sojun's face instantly became panicked, and sweat was pouring down his face as he realized that he had killed someone. Suddenly a tab appeared and told Kim Sojun that he had met the requirements, and since he personally killed that person, he could summon him as a skeleton underling. Knowing that, Kim Sojun's face turned even paler, and from behind him a sword almost hit him. Having pretty good reflexes, Kim Sojun managed to avoid the sword slash from one of the Vicious Blood Squad members several times. They said that Kim Sojun was a witness, and they wouldn't let him live. At that time, Kim Sojun thought that they were angry because Kim Sojun had killed their colleague. Therefore, he tried to explain everything to them if it was just an accident and he just fell from the sky. Unfortunately, his words did not work, and he was eventually chased by the Vicious Blood Squad, who shouted at him to die immediately. But while running, he tripped over his own feet and then fell to the ground. Right at that moment, his right arm was stabbed by a squad member's sword, causing him to cry out in pain. The squad member said that it was a reward for killing their replacement young cult leader, and he would send him away at least painlessly. Kim Sojun looked in great pain as the sword pierced deeper and deeper into his arm and began to wonder if he would die a miserable death. He then lamented his fate and recalled his previous achievements. In his heart, he wondered if he would just die on that place, and soon a tab appeared in front of him telling him if he could summon the first skeleton warrior and if he would summon him. With tears in his eyes, Kim Sojun thought that normally with his personality, he would first worry about his belongings, but in a moment of desperation, worry is a luxury. With a loud shout, Kim Sojun summoned the first skeleton warrior, at which time a very bright light appeared on his body and Chio Woobaek appeared. It is known that the first summon can use a fraction of his previous life ability, and the summon will share a fraction of his ability with the summoner. When Chio Woobaek appeared, the squad members looked very frightened, and did not think that he could come back to life considering his neck was completely destroyed. Then, the skin on Chio Woobaek's face gradually peeled off until finally leaving only his skull. The squad members were terrified by what they saw, and one of the squad members ran towards Chio Woobaek to attack him with a sword. One of the other squad members shouted to stop him, but it was too late. With a single slash of his sword, Chio Woobaek managed to kill the squad member. Then in front of Kim Sojun appeared another tab that told him that he could give orders to his skeleton warriors. With a terrifying smile, he then stood up and gave orders to his skeleton warrior to kill all the squad members. The setting switches when Kim Sojun is still in elementary school. In class, he introduces himself to his friends and has dreams of becoming a rich man. The dream he had made since he was a child. To realize it, he worked tirelessly, and although it was different from what he had in mind, in the end, when his dream was about to come true, a bright purple light enveloped the skeleton warrior's body. Chio Woobaek, who had now become Kim Sojun's skeleton warrior, shouted loudly with flaming eyes holding a sword and then ran towards the members of the Vicious Blood Squad, killing them all brutally. One of the squad members told them not to panic and asked them to immediately prepare to attack. She also said that even if Chio Woobaek had become a skeleton, he was still the young cult leader, and asked them all to focus on cutting off his limbs so that he could not move, because there's no way a mere skeleton can have inner energy. His sword technique just now was just a random attack with no movement, so he asked them all not to be afraid and keep attacking. Internal energy, sword techniques, stances. For Kim Sojun, it would be better if he did not know them all. He hated to admit it, but there was no doubt about it, and he realized that he had now fallen in the world of martial arts. On the other hand, the skeleton warrior was seen laughing, and the bodies of the squad members were seen trembling with the field in their hands. One of the squad members immediately ran towards the skeleton warrior, intending to cut off his head, but the attack was easily managed by the skeleton warrior. Many times the squad member attacked. Many times the skeleton soldier managed to parry their attacks. When the squad member was caught off guard, the skeleton warrior immediately stabbed her right in the heart with his sword. The skeleton warrior then smiled with satisfaction at this, and turned his gaze to the remaining squad members. The other squad members had no other choice, and simultaneously attacked the skeleton warrior, but the skeleton warrior easily defeated them. But it turned out that there were still some squad members left who suddenly attacked him and stabbed him in the back. The skeleton warrior turned his head towards him and then mercilessly attacked the squad member very sadistically. Likewise,
The fate of the other squad members who tried to attack him, they all died in a very gruesome way. Seeing the action carried out by his skeleton warriors, Kim Sojun showed a face full of fear, as it was the first massacre he had witnessed in his life. He then felt guilty for ordering the skeleton warriors to kill them all. Even so, he had no other choice, because if he didn't do it, then he would die at their hands. His reverie was soon interrupted when suddenly his sword-pierced arm felt very painful.
Limping, he tried to get away because there might still be enemies left behind. When he was about to leave the place, he saw his jacket containing gold coins, not far from where he was. Without further ado, he immediately took it back and left there immediately, leaving behind the members of the vicious blood squad who were already lying lifeless. Then switching to the Grand Myriad Mountains, the demonic cult's Kingseeker Pavilion saw an old man knowing that the Bloodwolf squad had been slaughtered, and in front of him there was a person kneeling in front of him. The man laughed loudly with a very horrible face while saying it was all very interesting. He also sent the person before him to go to the central mainland, and with a smile, the person accepted the order. At the East Lake Inn, 2 men were sitting there drinking. One of them asked if anything had happened because he looked very happy. With a happy smile, the man replied that today he just wanted to live life more pleasantly. The man's friend didn't expect to hear that from someone who always said his life was boring. The man replied with a laugh, and then asked if he had heard a rumor, where lately a new divine star had appeared. His friend replied that he was talking about the little moonstorm sword Yanjigang. The man shook his head and said that the little moonstorm sword Yanjigang was someone from the past. Then, right at that moment, the door of the inn was opened by someone who immediately entered the inn. The man continued to say the person he was referring to was King. King is a kind of nickname in the martial arts world, and is mainly named after the weapon, appearance, or martial arts used by the owner of the name. Hence, there was never a single case of someone among the newcomer Murim carrying the alias King. The man smilingly asked if he wanted to see him too, even though the rumors hadn't spread yet, but he was still the new star of a king's Murim. At the same time, a man was seen coming down the inn stairs, and everyone's eyes were on him. The man then walked up to the innkeeper and asked to give him a bell. He then rang the bell very loudly, and everyone in the inn cheered, because when the person rang the bell, then all the food would be free. The Golden King would pay for everything for them. That's what the person is called, which the Golden King turns out to be none other than Kim Sojun. Kim Sojun used to be just an ordinary high school teacher. Now he has become someone whose name is embraced by everyone to the point of calling him the Golden King. It was the 3rd week Kim Sojun came to the village. As he expected, the place was no other than the world of martial arts. Even so, now he didn't have to worry because he currently had gold coins that he could use all for the rest of his life. According to him, if he had gold, everything in this world would be easy. Then shortly while he was enjoying his drink, there was a group of men who poured water into his face to make everyone who was there very shocked. It was known that the men were a group of festive scholar bandits who tried to force Kim Sojun to hand over everything he had if he didn't want to die by their hands. Kim Sojun just laughed, making the bandit so annoyed that he took out his sword and pointed it right at Kim Sojun. Seeing the situation getting tense there, someone tried to intervene and asked the bandit to leave. But the bandit did not accept the behavior he got, so he pushed the person until he fell to the floor. Kim Sojun, who witnessed it all, then looked down on the bandit, making him even angrier. Suddenly there was a gurgling sound coming from the roof, and then a skeleton warrior appeared right behind the bandit's body. The bandit was shocked, and the skeleton warrior just laughed horribly at the expression shown by the bandit. Kim Sojun then tapped the skeleton warrior on the shoulder and asked him to attack the bandits who were there without killing them. After receiving the order, the skeleton warrior immediately shot towards the bandits. Meanwhile, Kim Sojun was seen still enjoying his drink, and then left with great satisfaction at the sound of the bandit's pain. Meanwhile, outside the inn, a beautiful woman with long hair and a sword was observing the inn. The woman was Dan Sik-young, the eldest daughter of the Gansis clan. She then entered the inn and was surprised that many people were lying unconscious. The waiter who was there welcomed her, and then apologized for the chaotic situation that occurred. Sighing, Dan Sik-young asked the maid to immediately prepare a room for her, but suddenly the maid was surprised when she saw the pattern of the hanger around Dan Sik-young's waist. Because of the look given by the maid, Dan Sik-young asked her about it. The waiter frantically apologized to her, and told her that she was familiar with the pattern because one of their guests also wore the same pattern as Dan Sik-young. On the other hand, Kim Sojun was seen patting the skeleton warrior's shoulder because he felt very happy after he managed to teach a lesson to the bandits who disturbed him. It can be seen that the robe used by the skeleton warrior has the same pattern as the hanger used by Dan Sekyung. Kim Sojun was still busy in his own mind, where he felt that being there was not a curse like what was said. He thought everything that happened was very cool. While saying those words, a table appeared in front of him, telling him that the words it once heard, and it said that Kim Sojun was not a resident of Morim. Kim Sojun, who saw that, was very surprised, and the table in front of him also showed other words where it was said that uninvited guests should return to their world safely. Therefore, Kim Sojun had an experimental project quest, which was to start a repatriation project. Then in front of him appeared the Stage 1 Round 1 Repatriation Project tab, entering the Venerable Martial Academy, and there was a choice whether Kim Sojun wanted to accept the quest or not. Meanwhile, Dan Sekyung, who heard the maid's words about the hanger pattern, was surprised because the pattern was actually a badge for students who were accepted at the Venerable Martial Academy, and every student who was accepted there had to wear the badge. Hearing Venerable Martial Academy, the maid was amazed because she knew it was the biggest and most famous school in Murim. Venerable Martial Academy is an institution that every clan dreams of sending their best young people to study, or it can be said that it is the best educational institution in Murim. Knowing that another student had been accepted into the academy, Dan Sekyung planned to take him to the academy together tomorrow morning, although she did not know which clan he belonged to, but seeing the bandits lying unconscious on the floor made her think that he must be a good person. On the other hand, Kim Sojun, who got a new quest, finally rejected the quest because he thought it was very troublesome, especially now that he has a lot of gold coins so he can eat and play around for the rest of his life. When he was about to sleep, the quest notification reappeared and suddenly disappeared, replaced by a notification about the penalty for rejecting the given quest. Therefore, Kim Sojun would receive punishment. A tab appeared telling him that the death curse penalty had been activated. Kim Sojun was surprised, and suddenly he felt a very intense headache, and then he also felt his hand become painful. When he looked at his hand, he was surprised because little by little the skin of his hand peeled off until leaving only the bones of his hand. As that happened, Kim Sojun began to recall how he ended up in that world. He then screamed very loudly because of the strange voice he heard, where the voice kept saying that the person who disturbed the king's rest deserved to be cursed. Then suddenly, the left side of his face looked like it was melting until it made him fall down limply because he felt pain. Slowly, he then tried to get closer to the mirror nearby, and when he saw his face in the mirror, he was very surprised because part of his body was now only bones. With what happened to him, Kim Sojun became the first human to turn into a skeleton, and from the direction of his bedroom door, a laughing skeleton warrior could be seen. Seeing his dire situation, Kim Sojun panicked, and suddenly the tab quest reappeared in front of him. Kim Sojun angrily said that he didn't care about the Venerable Martial Academy at all, and only wanted his body back to normal. Another tab also appeared and told him that if Kim Sojun could complete the limited quest, then his punishment could be cancelled. Then, inevitably, Kim Sojun finally accepted the quest, and the first task to complete the quest was that he had to meet the nobleman on the first floor of the inn tomorrow morning. The next morning, Dan Sekyung looked like she was waiting for someone, and accidentally saw the crack in the floor where the skeleton warrior appeared. Feeling that she would find the person at the academy, she decided to go alone, but as she was about to leave, her steps stopped when she saw a man walking down the stairs who was none other than Kim Sojun and the skeleton warrior. At that time, Kim Sojun was wearing the robe used by the skeleton warrior, where there was an academy badge. Seeing the badge, Dan Sekyung realized that Kim Sojun was the person she wanted to meet. Meanwhile, in his mind, Kim Sojun felt very upset because he had to do something troublesome, because he had to meet a nobleman he did not know at all. Then his reverie was interrupted when he saw Dan Sekyung in front of him, who immediately greeted him. Dan Sekyung introduced herself, but she didn't get any response from Kim Sojun. In his heart, Kim Sojun said that he didn't expect the girl in front of him to be the nobleman mentioned. The atmosphere then became awkward, until it made Dan Sekyung apologize for being rude to him, but she only did it because she was very happy to meet a student of the same academy as her, especially since that person managed to beat up the bandits last night. At that time, a notification tab appeared if the quest was successful, and a new quest appeared where Kim Sojun had to follow the nobleman to the Venerable Martial Academy. Additional rewards will be given when the affinity level reaches 100, and the additional reward is a +1 skeleton slot. Kim Sojun accepted the quest, and soon above Dan Sekyung's head appeared a heart-shaped object with the number 15% written inside, which indicated the affinity level, and if it was full, then Kim Sojun could summon another Golgol.
Kim Sojun then glanced at the skeleton warrior and suddenly his eyes shone brightly while laughing. Kim Sojun then recalled his encounter with the skeleton warrior, where he would have died if not for the sect's young leader Golgol. If he could summon another Golgol, then it would definitely be a big help for him. Kim Sojun then smiled while muttering that it was all good. Hearing Kim Sojun seemingly talking, Dan Sek-young asked what he was talking about. Kim Sojun was surprised, and he lied by saying that he was happy that he could go to the academy with her. Dan Sek-young smiled happily, because she thought she was the one who should have said those words. On the way, Dan Sek-young asked about the skeleton warrior who followed them. He felt strange because the person behind her was wrapped in a very creepy blanket. Kim Sojun also saw Dan Sek-young confused by the skeleton with a blanket. He explained that it was his bodyguard, and he deliberately wrapped the skeleton with a blanket. Hearing that explanation, Dan Sek-young said that she now understood why people in the Central Plains were considered quite strange. After that, out of curiosity, Dan Sek-young asked about Kim Sojun's origin. She guessed that Kim Sojun must have come from a prestigious Orthodox sect. With a laugh, Kim Sojun replied that he did not come from the place she thought. He only came from a small sect without a name. Hearing that, Dan Sek-young panicked and immediately apologized because, considering how honest he was, she thought Kim Sojun was from an extraordinary sect.
In order not to feel awkward, Kim Sojun replied that he didn't mind at all if he was considered like that. Their conversation didn't stop there. Dan Sek-young asked him a lot of questions, especially about what weapons he used to fight. Dan Sek-young apologized for asking such a question because, for Jianghu people, weapons are as important as their lives. But she asked it without thinking about it and considered herself stupid. Hearing Dan Sek-young's babbling, Kim Sojun showed his annoyed face while answering that he also used a sword to fight. Kim Sojun was annoyed that Dan Sek-young kept engaging him in conversation without stopping. But even so, he had to endure because listening to her story would help him to increase her affinity level, which had now reached up to 52%. In the middle of the journey, a strange rustling sound was heard. Kim Sojun asked questions about the sound he heard, while Dan Sek-young seemed not to care about it and kept talking without stopping. Then from above them, several weapons shot towards Dan Sek-young. Kim Sojun, who knew it without thinking, immediately saved Dan Sek-young. But because of his action, he was stabbed by so many weapons all over his body. With a worried face, Dan Sek-young asked why he did that. Instead of answering her question, Kim Sojun asked how Dan Sek-young condition. Seeing Kim Sojun's heroic actions made her affinity level become full quickly. The quest tab reappears and tells him that 100% affinity has been reached, and he gets an additional reward of 1 skeleton slot, even though he managed to save Dan Sek-young. But in his heart, Kim Sojun cursed because what he did almost made him die. He could still live only thanks to the skeleton. Then shortly from the forest came a group of people who approached them. One of them said that if Dan Sek-young fell after their attack, then they wouldn't have to waste each other's energy unnecessarily. As her senior in Jianghu, he didn't want to fight his junior. Hearing that, Dan Sek-young took out her sword and immediately came forward to protect Kim Sojun. From what she heard, Dan Sek-young was sure that these people were people she recognized. Seeing the condition of Kim Sojun's body that had been stuck with a weapon, Dan Sek-young promised to protect him and draw his attention. One of the men asked if it was true that she was the eldest daughter of the Dangansu clan. Hearing that, Dan Sek-young did not expect the men in front of her to know her identity. The men laughed while Dan Sek-young gritted her teeth in annoyance. She pointed her sword at the men while saying that she would not hesitate to kill anyone who came to her with bad intentions. Without further ado, Dan Sek-young darted quickly towards the men, while Kim Sojun and the skeleton warriors could only stare at her. In Dan Sek-young's mind, she thought that the one who attacked first would win, and the most important thing right now was that she would subvert them first. Dan Sek-young then used Dan Clan's secret arts, Sun Moon Sword Technique. She swung her sword, and a yellow flash appeared from her sword. She was confident that her attack would hit the man, but she didn't expect it to be so easily dodged by the man. She was so shocked that her eyes widened in disbelief at what she was seeing. Unexpectedly, the man ended up striking back at her by kicking her in the stomach and causing her mouth to bleed. The attack had made her almost unconscious, but due to her strong endurance, she managed to regain consciousness and issued another attack, Moonlight Reversal, which almost hit the man. Although the man didn't think her attack was that bad, with a dismissive look, the man said that it was obvious that Dan Sek-young hadn't studied well at all. If she wanted to kill him, Dan Sek-young should have a little more confidence. He then strangled Dan Sek-young until she was in pain, and the longer he strangled her, the stronger the strangulation became, leaving Dan Sek-young helpless. The sword that she was holding earlier fell down. Then suddenly, with a scary face, Kim Sojun shouted to the man to stop the action immediately.
The man turned his head towards him, and not expecting that he was still alive, he then threw Dan Sik-young's body to the ground and approached Kim So-jun and the skeleton warrior. With a dismissive look, the man said Kim So-jun could still be alive if he pretended to be dead, because right now he really wouldn't hesitate to kill him. While advancing towards him, the man said not to hate them too much. After all, this is what Murim is all about. Still with his creepy gaze, Kim So-jun was silent and then remembered the beginning of his arrival. He was initially shocked by the place called Murim, as the people there always greeted each other with swords, while regarding other people's lives to be worth less than a fly. However, ironically, the situation gave him a sense of freedom after decades of being bound by the law.
And in situations like these, there's no need to hesitate to use violence, unlike in the past. Then, with a firm voice, he said to the skeleton warrior that it was time to shine. The skeleton warrior, who hid his body behind a floral blanket, from under the blanket his eyes shone brightly, and then slowly advanced towards the men. Seeing that did not seem to scare the man, and instead ordered his subordinates to kill them. He also said they must not let a single person live to tell what happened tonight. After getting the order, his subordinates immediately ran towards them with various weapons to attack. The skeleton warrior was seen preparing with his sword, holding the sword from behind his body. He immediately swung his sword as they all approached, but unfortunately his attack this time missed where they all managed to avoid the attack. One of them underestimated the skeleton warrior by saying that his movement was too slow, but his words were stopped when he accidentally saw the skeleton warrior's eyes glowing where there should be no human eyes like that. In that moment, he felt that those eyes showed no emotion, but were like a person who couldn't feel anything. In his careless state, the skeleton warrior again swung his sword and slashed the man's body in half, making all of them there show a face full of panic. From what the skeleton warrior showed, they believed that he was a martial master and they had no choice but to pin him down. Then one of the men threw a chain at the skeleton warrior that made him wrapped around the chain and unable to move. In his helpless state, they all together tried to attack him by stabbing his body using swords. But unlike what they imagined, they felt strange when their swords pierced the skeleton warrior's body, where they all felt like they were piercing the air. Meanwhile, in the distance, Kim So-jun, who saw the skeleton warriors being surrounded, began to feel that the situation might make them both lose, but suddenly he came up with an idea. Kim So-jun remembered that he had managed to get an extra skeleton slot after completing the quest. He then ran quickly towards a dead man, while the other group of men were still busy attacking the skeleton warrior because he didn't die despite being stabbed with so many swords. Showing a disgusted face, he approached the body of a man who had been split in two and summoned it. Then the man's body shone so brightly that it distracted all of them. Then the man's body that had been split into two then reunited, and then his body melted until leaving only his bones. He then turned his head by showing a very horrible face while shouting very loudly. Right after summoning the man, a tab appeared informing him that he had successfully summoned his second skeleton, and he would get a fragment of the power of the skeleton he summoned. From the second summon, he could cancel his summon. Kim So-jun, who was exhausted, then ordered the skeleton to kill them all, and without a signal, the skeleton ran towards them and attacked them with the Void Fist technique, making some of them successfully defeated. Meanwhile, the skeleton warrior was still trying to untie the chains on his body. With great difficulty, he cut the chains with his sword. In the end, his efforts were not in vain. He managed to cut the chains so that the people who tried to restrain his movement were blown away. With a scary face and while laughing, the skeleton warrior panicked them all to make those who were there like hypnotized, unable to move. The skeleton warrior took the opportunity and then slashed their bodies. Now the two skeletons worked together to fight to defeat the men until in the end, only one person was left there. With a meaningful smile, the two skeletons looked at the man while laughing horribly. Seeing that, the man ran to escape and grabbed an item tied to Dan Sik-young's waist and then ran back quickly. But surprisingly, there was a skeleton warrior who caught up with him, and without further ado, he immediately killed the man until fresh blood spurted everywhere. After the fight ended, Kim So-jun carried the unconscious Dan Sik-young under a tree. Kim So-jun sighed tiredly due to the tension of the situation. Then the skeleton warrior returned and showed Dan Sik-young's belongings that were taken by the man. Kim So-jun was very curious as to what kind of item the men were looking for to chase a child. While observing the package, Kim So-jun speculated that the item must be a great treasure. When he opened the package, he saw a butterfly-patterned box that made a luxurious impression. Seeing the outer appearance already looks amazing, he is sure that the inside of the box must be even more amazing. When he opened the box, Kim So-jun was very surprised by what he saw where inside the box was a smartphone. He wondered why it was there. Kim Sojun felt that it all made no sense at all, and even stranger when he held the smartphone, he realized that the smartphone was the latest model. From what he found, it made Kim Sojun's head spin thinking about who Dan Se-kyung really was. Soon after Dan Se-kyung came to her senses, she was surprised to see Kim Sojun holding the smartphone. Stammering, Dan Se-kyung asked him to return the smartphone to her. Then she took the sword and immediately pointed it at Kim Sojun while saying that she didn't want to point the sword at her savior, so she asked Kim Sojun to give the smartphone back to her. Seeing the panic on Dan Se-kyung's face, Kim Sojun could only look at her closely and saw that her hand was so nervous while holding her sword. Kim Sojun sighed, and with a sharp gaze he said before returning the object, he wanted to ask Dan Se-kyung one thing. First he asked who the people who attacked them were. But Dan Se-kyung replied that she didn't know who those people were either. All she knew was that there were many people who were targeting her clan's treasure, and she thought they were one of them. Then secondly, Kim Sojun asked whether Dan Se-kyung knew what exactly the object he was holding right now was. Dan Se-kyung replied that it was her family's treasure. She didn't know the details, but she was sure that it could be used someday. Hearing this explanation, Kim Sojun was even more confused about what happened to the world. For him, it made no sense to keep a smartphone as an heirloom. Seeing Kim Sojun not budging after hearing her answer, Dan Se-kyung once again asked Kim Sojun to return the object while still holding her sword tightly. Although still curious about how Dan Se-kyung's family was able to get the smartphone, for now Kim Sojun would refrain for the time being until he could complete this quest. He then returned it to Dan Se-kyung, who was very surprised that Kim Sojun would easily return it to her when many people were targeting it. After getting it back, Dan Se-kyung hurriedly apologized to Kim Sojun because she had pointed her sword at her own helper. Kim Sojun said he was okay with it. Seeing his attitude like that made Dan Se-kyung even more fascinated with the kindness shown by Kim Sojun that made her eyes couldn't stop looking at his face. Then Dan Se-kyung suddenly looked up at the sky and was surprised to see that the sun was about to rise. She yelled to Kim Sojun that they were already late for the academy. She said that if a student didn't get to the academy before sunrise, their admission would be cancelled. Kim Sojun, who heard that, became shocked, because if he didn't get to the academy on time, then he would fail his quest, and if he failed, he would live as a skeleton forever. Not wanting that to happen, Kim Sojun asked Dan Se-kyung to leave quickly to continue their journey to the academy. Unfortunately, when Dan Se-kyung was about to walk, she felt pain in her ankle that made her unable to walk. Since it was impossible for her to walk, while enduring the pain, Dan Se-kyung told Kim Sojun to go first. Kim Sojun was worried because if Dan Se-kyung arrived late, then her acceptance would be cancelled. Hearing that, Dan Se-kyung felt sad and did not know what to do because the current situation did not allow her to continue the trip at all. Kim Sojun then approached Dan Se-kyung and then embraced her to help her stand up with a smile by inviting her to go together since they were classmates. Dan Se-kyung looked at him with emotion, and then the two continued their journey to the academy. At the Venerable Martial Academy, there were 4 men standing in front of the gate. One of the men, named Man Chan, the chairman of the 7 Strike Sword Student Council, looked very tired and said that it was time to close the gate. But one of his friends said that there were still 2 people who had not arrived. Man Chan, who heard that, could not tolerate it because for him the rule was to close the door at dawn. There was no forgiveness for those who were late on the first day. Just as he was about to close the gate, a voice shouted not to close the door, and Kim Sojun and Dan Se-kyung were seen limping with sweat pouring down their faces towards the academy gate. Despite hearing their voices, Man Chan firmly told his friend to close the gate. Seeing the gate continue to close, from a distance Kim Sojun asked them not to close the door. Man Chan then shouted to them to go back because they were already late. Not accepting his words, Dan Se-kyung responded by saying that the sun hadn't fully risen, but her words were completely ignored, and instead Man Chan said that it was all his decision. Feeling guilty, Dan Se-kyung kept trying to convince Man Chan to let them in. She said that they were both in an unexpected situation, and she would explain everything to him. Unfortunately, her efforts were in vain. Man Chan didn't want to hear her excuse at all, while Kim Sojun looked worried, because if it continued like this, then he would fail the quest. With a face full of resentment, Kim Sojun called Man Chan and then challenged him to a fight. Whoever wins, then that person can do whatever he wants. From inside the academy, Man Chan, who heard this, was so angry and provoked that he agreed to the challenge. Man Chan was such a promising talent that his appearance at the academy caught everyone's attention. When he introduced himself as a 7-strike swordsman, Dan Se-kyung was surprised because from what she heard he was very strong, and she began to worry about Kim Sojun's safety. In the fight, Manly Chan said that if Kim Sojun could take 5 punches from him, then he would let them in. Dan Sek-young, after hearing that, became even more worried, because she thought that 3 punches was too many. Kim Sojun remained silent, then stepped forward as a sign of accepting the terms. Dan Sek-young tried to stop him, but Kim Sojun remained stubborn and insisted on fighting Manly Chan. In his heart, he laughed at Manly Chan, because if he fought his skeleton warrior, he would definitely win this fight. But his face became panicked when Manly Chan told him that in the fight, he had to fight him directly without the help of his bodyguards. Seeing his panicked face, Manly Chan was surprised because he didn't expect Kim Sojun to think he would send his bodyguards to fight with him. Not wanting to be underestimated, Kim Sojun agreed, and then he took the sword from the skeleton warrior and prepared to attack him. Manly Chan was shocked when Kim Sojun pulled out his sword, which made him call him an arrogant man, so he promised to make him regret it. Manly Chan then ran towards Kim Sojun while holding his sword. Meanwhile, Kim Sojun, who was still standing in place, felt a tremendous pressure that made his legs unable to move. Manly Chan was getting closer towards him. He tried his best to move, but still his legs seemed to be held back by something, until when the sword almost hit his body, he managed to deflect it with his sword. But because Manly Chan's sword swing was so strong, his body was bounced far enough back that he lost his balance and fell. Seeing that Manly Chan counted it as 1 blow received, and soon Kim Sojun managed to get up even though his body felt enough pain to make him tremble. In that condition, Kim Sojun was sure he would not be able to block the next attack. When he thought so, suddenly a tab appeared in front of him, telling him that he would get a fragment of the power of his skeleton summon by transferring martial arts from his skeleton summon. Then a blue light came out of the skeleton warrior's body and then flew into Kim Sojun's body, making him enveloped by a very bright blue aura. Seeing Kim Sojun not focusing on their battle, Manly Chan became annoyed and unceremoniously darted forward towards Kim Sojun while swinging his sword, ready to attack. Kim Sojun, who was already exhausted from the previous attack, was surprised as his body miraculously moved on its own and immediately jumped to parry Manly Chan's attack. Not only that, he also ended up kicking him when Manly Chan was caught off guard, making it difficult for him to withstand his attack. From that punch, Kim Sojun counted it as 2 punches received, and he smiled with satisfaction at his accomplishment. The strength he received amazed Kim Sojun because he was able to become strong like that, thanks to sharing abilities with the skeleton warrior, who was none other than Cheo Woobaek. When he was caught off guard, Kim Sojun was surprised to realize that Manly Chan had disappeared from in front of him and appeared behind his body to attack. But the great thing was that his attack was dodged by Kim Sojun quickly, and even his speed could be said to be extraordinary because Manly Chan seemed to be confused by the existence of Kim Sojun, who could change places in a very short time. Kim Sojun then attacked Manly Chan repeatedly, making it very difficult for him to avoid Kim Sojun's attacks. Meanwhile, Manly Chan's friends looked very shocked because they didn't expect anyone to be able to get Manly Chan cornered. The fight became more serious. Now Manly Chan took off his red robe and pointed the sword at Kim Sojun. But instead of being scared, Kim Sojun looked confused as he felt he had already fulfilled the 5-punch requirement. Manly Chan looked very upset while Kim Sojun casually walked towards Dan Sek-young to help her walk into the academy. Not accepting that, Manly Chan tried to challenge him again, but his action was stopped by someone named Professor Baek Sa, who then told Kim Sojun and Dan Sek-young to enter the academy. Unable to do much, Manly Chan finally gave up and invited the 2 of them to enter, and then left them. Dan Sek-young then praised Kim Sojun's prowess as she didn't expect him to survive against the leader of the student council, and someone who was famous for having promising talent. Kim Sojun said that he only withstood 5 of her attacks, and it wasn't like he won against him. But even so, Dan Sek-young said it was still great. Meanwhile, in his mind, Kim Sojun was amazed that by sharing abilities with the skeleton warrior, his movements were as natural as if the abilities were his own. But he still wondered why the abilities were only active now. Seeing Kim Sojun's arrival, Professor Baek Sa seemed to know something where he said that Kim Sojun must be a young man who came from that place. And then he also said that the wind began to blow, and the wind smelled of blood. Then the wind blew very fast towards him. In the academy, Kim Sojun received a notification if he successfully completed the quest, and as a reward, the curse he received was cancelled, and then he returned to being a normal human being. Meanwhile, in a dark hallway, a man was walking while holding a torch to a place. Suddenly, the hallway shook and small stones fell from the roof, making thick dust blocking the man's vision. Then he came to a place where there was a huge spider web, and then the man thought about it with the torch. Soon a large and terrible creature appeared in front of him. which was known as the White Phantom. The man stared at it sharply, and then threw a liquid towards the White Phantom while saying Muram must be purified so that his world would return again. After doing this, the man ran away while the White Phantom looked even more terrifying with its glowing red eyes. After 2 days of arriving at the academy, in the morning Kim Sojun was seen relaxing on a garden chair. He was reflecting on his life's fate that had regressed where in the original plan he was going to enjoy life by spending his gold coins, but now he was stuck in an academy that he didn't know at all. But even so, he would not give up on his new life and planned to do nothing while there and then graduate from the academy quickly. While still enjoying the bright morning atmosphere, suddenly Professor Baek-sa was right in front of him, greeting and saying that he knew where Kim Sojun was from. Kim Sojun was surprised and wondered if this old man in front of him knew that he was from Korea. Professor Baek-sa continued his words. He could tell that after he saw the fighting style Kim Sojun showed against the student council leader, he could clearly feel the deep energy that only members of that place use. From the conversation, Kim Sojun was able to conclude that what Professor Baek-sa meant was the origin of the skeleton warriors. Then Professor Baek-sa also introduced himself to Kim Sojun. Knowing that the old man in front of him was a professor, he felt quite worried because why would a professor come to look for him? Whether it was because he fought with the student council leader, or there was another reason. Not wanting to create suspicion, Kim Sojun turned around to introduce himself to Professor Baek-sa. But unlike what he thought, the professor seemed suspicious of him after he mentioned his name. According to him, as far as he knew, the leader of the place was not from the Kim clan or anything else. Fortunately, even though he was suspicious, but Professor Baek-sa did not want to bother and said that it was none of his business. Then, out of curiosity, Kim Sojun asked about the purpose of coming to him. But his question was greeted by the laughter of the professor, who said that he was a new student who was quite brave, not only brave, but also impolite. Professor Baek-sa's face suddenly turned emotional, and he used his ability on Kim Sojun to teach him a lesson. But because Kim Sojun used the ability from his summon, which is impervious to killing intent, Professor Baek-sa's power had no effect on him at all. Professor Baek-sa was surprised to see that Kim Sojun didn't feel anything at all, which made him call Kim Sojun a unique man. Then he said that the principal is currently looking for him, and he was asked to meet him immediately. Seeing Kim Sojun's confused face, Professor Baek-sa explained that since the Venerable Martial Academy's exchange program with that place was approved, the principal was very curious about his new student. Professor Baek-sa also took him to the principal's place. On the way, the two of them occasionally talked. Professor suddenly asked about the atmosphere of the place. He said the Orthodox faction and the demonic sect will unite after 70 years, so shouldn't the atmosphere of the place also change? The demonic sect and the Orthodox faction have been enemies for a long time, and it must have been a difficult decision. From what Professor Baek-sa talked about, Kim Sojun understood that the place was the Orthodox faction, and the skeleton warriors were from the demonic sect. And if it was said that they would unite after 70 years, he understood more about why the skeleton warriors were attacked. It was probably because there were some people from the demonic sect who did not want to unite with the Orthodox faction. Kim Sojun was worried that it would be a problem for him. Professor Baek-sa then woke him up from his reverie and said that the two of them had arrived at the principal's room, and he asked him to go in there himself. Before leaving, Professor Baek-sa told him to always be careful, and he also told him not to trust the principal too much. Kim Sojun then thanked him for the advice. Then he walked towards the principal's room. Just before entering the room, he suddenly felt a very strange feeling, and somehow suddenly a tab appeared in front of him showing a time. When entering the principal's room, he met a white-haired old man named Jong Ritai, who was none other than the principal of the Venerable Martial Academy. He said that he had been waiting for him for a long time, hearing that Kim Sojun apologized because he should have greeted him immediately after getting there. Then Kim Sojun asked about Jong Ritai's purpose for wanting to meet him. Jong Rit replied that the Orthodox faction people think people from the demonic sect have horns, and they are monsters who drink human blood, but there is not much difference between the demonic sect people and the Orthodox faction. He then asked if what he said was true. Kim Sojun casually said if he also thought that way. Jong Ritai then asked Kim Sojun again, how did he respond to people from the Orthodox faction who thought that they were far superior to people from the demonic sect? Kim Sojun was silent and answered that they were free to think whatever they wanted because he didn't want to strip them of their freedom to think. Getting a very surprising answer, Jong Ritai seemed to be amazed by the words of a child from a demonic sect. He laughed, satisfied with the answer given. Jong Ritai then walked slowly towards Kim Sojun and gave him a request. She asked Kim Sojun to become the best student in the academy,
and bring down those hypocrites from the Orthodox faction and change their mindset. Right after Jung Rita finished his words, a new quest appeared in front of him to become the best student among new students.
If he succeeded, he would get a special summon, but if he failed, he would get a curse from death. Not only that, if he refused the quest, then his summon slot would be reduced by 1. Seeing the quest in front of him made Kim Sojin very upset, because if he refused the quest, he lost so much that it made him inevitably accept the quest. With his voice shaking from holding back his emotions, Kim Sojin replied that he would accept Jung Rita's request. Jung Rita smiled with satisfaction at Kim Sojin's answer, while Kim Sojin, while holding back his emotions, asked Jung Rita as the principal of the academy to take care of him while he was there. Jung Rita smiled and said that Kim Sojin was very humble and did not expect that there was someone like him among the promising talents in the Orthodox faction. Despite being praised like that, it didn't put Kim Sojin in a good mood, but it made him even more upset. After finishing with his business, Kim Sojin said goodbye and left there feeling very upset. Right after Kim Sojin left, Jung Rita just realized that there was one more thing he wanted to ask Kim Sojin, which he wanted to ask about a writing behind him. Meanwhile, outside, Kim Sojin looks still upset and says if they won't be able to thwart his plan with that trick. Despite getting a request like that, he remains with his stance where he will not do anything and become the best student no matter what. Soon, Kim Sojin felt the same strange feeling again when he had just arrived there. Then the time tab appeared again in front of him. At first, Kim Sojin did not want to care about the tab, but because the table appeared continuously in the end, he followed the direction of the arrows on the table and thought if it could be that the tab wanted to show a treasure place. He followed the arrow and arrived at a place where there was a staircase leading to the basement. Kim Sojin felt very happy because what he thought was right. He was sure that in that underground room he would get an extraordinary treasure. Just as he was about to go down the stairs, he collided with a man who was frantically running out of there. The man rolled over and fell and re-entered the underground room. The man scolded him, asking what the students were doing there, and told Kim Sojin to get out of the way. Kim Sojin became confused. Suddenly his time at the tab ran out, making him even more upset. Kim Sojin felt strange with the attitude shown by the man where the man said that it was too late. The giant white phantom had woken up. Confused, Kim Sojin tried to ask about the meaning of what the man was talking about. Before he could answer from inside the underground room, a very terrible aura was felt which made the man's face turn pale. Suddenly the ground around them cracked, and from the basement appeared a creature that made the man run in panic fear. He quickly tried to run up the stairs out of the place, but unfortunately the creature pulled out his nails and stuck them right in the man's heart until fresh blood flowed from there. Kim Sojin was shocked, and did not expect what he was seeing at this time. The white phantom then showed himself completely with red eyes that flashed. He tried to run towards Kim Sojin to attack him. Luckily at that time, Kim Sojin was in a state of readiness, so that he immediately summoned a skeleton. Shortly after that, from the ground came out a skeleton that immediately attacked the white phantom. Unfortunately, the strength he had was not comparable to the white phantom, so he easily defeated him. You can see the anger on the white phantom's face. With one attack he managed to defeat the skeleton to make his body fall apart. The white phantom then ran towards him ferociously. Kim Sojin tried to revive the skeleton, but apparently could not because his body was completely destroyed. The white phantom's attack finally hit his body. Kim Sojin felt an extraordinary power that made it difficult to attack, because he could not withstand the white phantom's attack longer. Kim Sojin's body was slammed far and fell down, making it difficult for him to get back up. While cornered, Kim Sojin saw a sword lying not far from where he was. He then tried to grab it. With trembling hands, Kim Sojin managed to grab the sword, and right at that moment the white phantom was already in front of him. Kim Sojin laughed because of his missed estimation where he previously thought that in the basement there was treasure, but in fact the opposite turned out to be a terrible monster that appeared. With the remaining energy, Kim Sojin tried to get back up, but before he could attack, the white phantom had attacked him first. Fortunately, with his increased agility skills, he could easily avoid all white phantom attacks. When the white phantom's view was obstructed by the dust, Kim Sojin suddenly appeared and attacked the white phantom with his sword until it hit his head. The white phantom became even more enraged, his eyes showing great anger. He brutally attacked Kim Sojin. Kim Sojin was bounced away again, leaving his body lying helpless, but he didn't give up. When the white phantom was near him, Kim Sojin did not lose his mind. He spontaneously changed his attack tactics, where he changed the target of his attack this time. With his agility, he managed to make the white phantom's stomach hurt until he screamed in pain. Even so, it didn't have much effect on the white phantom, so he could still attack Kim Sojin. Kim Sojin got attack after attack, but he managed to parry it with his sword. But even so, the White Phantom was getting more aggressive and attacked him blindly. Just as his attack was about to hit Kim Sojun, from behind the bush, a skeleton warrior came and cut one of the White Phantom's body parts. With the presence of the skeleton warrior, the two of them together tried to defeat the White Phantom. After considerable effort and good cooperation between them in the end, they both managed to defeat the White Phantom. After their victory, a tab appeared telling him that he could add a White Phantom to his summon slot, and Kim Sojun agreed. Soon a group of people arrived, and were shocked by the terrible situation there. They became hysterical when they saw the dead body of the man killed by the White Phantom who turned out to be a professor. The principal, Jong Rite, who was also there, was confused by Kim Sojun's presence, so she asked if Kim Sojun defeated the White Phantom. Kim Sojun also explained that previously he heard a strange sound and he came there, but when he got there he was surprised because there was a terrible monster. Then in order for him to survive, inevitably he must kill the White Phantom. Jong Rite was amazed because for him it was not easy for a child to face the White Phantom, let alone kill it. Even though it felt strange, but he was grateful that Kim Sojun survived, and then he told him to return to the academy. Kim Sojun also said goodbye and left there, but it seems that Professor Baek-sa did not accept Jong Rite's decision to let him go, because according to him, Kim Sojun was the only witness to the incident. Not wanting to make the debate even longer, Jong Rite, as well as the principal, asked to take care of the students so that they would not panic over this incident. On the way to the academy, Kim Sojun was very curious if he could summon a White Phantom. He tried it, and it worked. The terrifying White Phantom that he previously encountered has now turned into bones, making his figure not so terrifying anymore. After getting a relentless attack from the White Phantom, with a mischievous look, Kim Sojun ordered the skeleton warrior to teach him a lesson. The skeleton soldier then approached him and beat the White Phantom until he looked in pain. After being satisfied with pranking the White Phantom, Kim Sojun then cancelled his summons and continued his journey to the academy. When he arrived at his dorm room, Kim Sojun was shocked to see that the roof of his room had been destroyed. This turned out to be the work of the skeleton warrior, where while he was there he heard Kim Sojun was in danger, so he thoughtlessly broke through the roof to get out. The skeleton warrior's behavior made Kim Sojun only sigh, then lay on the bed while looking at the sky seen from there. When he saw the moon shining brightly there, he saw something strange where it turned out that there was a knife sliding towards him. Fortunately, the skeleton warrior immediately blocked the attack so that he could survive. The knife was stuck in the wall of his room. When he picked it up, there was a piece of paper, and when he opened it, there was a message asking him to meet behind the Jesse dormitory that night. Kim Sojun ignored the message and preferred to sleep. On the other hand, behind Jesse's dormitory, there was a person in a robe standing on a tree. The person was none other than the person who sent the message to Kim Sojun. The person looked bored because she had waited for Kim Sojun for a long time, so in the end she left there with a very annoyed look. In the morning, Kim Sojun walked in the academy area while enjoying the familiar atmosphere, where the atmosphere felt the same as at school in general. After walking quite a long way, he arrived at his class. From outside the classroom, a young man was seen introducing himself. The young man named Noah came from Sarang, and he was the head of the class. His introduction did not seem to be well received by the students in the class, where they all showed confused faces. Kim Sojun then entered the class, and he unwittingly hit Noah's head with his book, shocking the whole class. Kim Sojun panicked because of his habit of being a teacher, coming out at an inopportune moment. Noah interpreted his action as a challenge, and as a warrior, of course, he would accept the challenge. Noah then tore off his shirt, saying that since he first came to school, today was his most excited day. Before Kim Sojun could explain, Noah was already preparing to attack. Seeing the sudden battle in the classroom, one of the students in the class became enthusiastic to the point of calling it a furious battle because he could see the fight of one of the descendants of a Jiumacho, who was none other than Noah. With his fist, Noah darted towards Kim Sojun, but he managed to dodge the attack quickly. Even his speed surprised him. Kim Sojun did not attack him at all, and only avoided his attack, making Noah confused. In the midst of his confusion came a teacher who immediately hit his head with a book just like Kim Sojun did before. Kim Sojun, who was already sitting on his chair, could only smile with relief. While Noah was being punished for breaking the teacher's desk, the bald-headed teacher began to introduce himself. With his ability, he wrote his name on the blackboard without touching the chalk at all. He was known as White Tarian, and he would be teaching them for 1 year. He said maybe some of them had heard the name and some had not. Suddenly one student said he knew the name, White Tarian, Baek Muyong from Baeksan. Out of curiosity, another student asked him if the White Tarian was so great, to which the boy replied excitedly by saying that he was the one who was chosen by Master Beck Day as a student, so it was an honor for him to be taught by a master like him. Hearing the child's explanation, all the students in the class looked very impressed with the teacher in front of them. But the atmosphere became tense when White Tarian said they had to learn seriously. If they didn't want to, they would all die. Hearing these words, a student tried to ask about what the teacher meant. White Tarian explained as they had heard, something was happening on campus, which was because they were killing each other. The students' faces turned deathly pale and asked what exactly happened. But White Tarian couldn't give a clear answer because the case was still being investigated, and whoever it was had to be held responsible. He then pointed to Kim Sojun and said that if he was the one who had to be responsible, he also said that he expected a lot from Kim Sojun while he was in his class. While whispering, White Tarian said a surprising thing where he said with Kim Sojun's presence in his class, he could decide whether he would save him or not. Kim Sojun then gave a sharp look to White Tarian after he finished his words. As a teacher, White Tarian gave some advice to his students, saying this was a battlefield. The school needed children to be Muram. It was also a place for them to choose talented people. He also asked them to choose the class president by hand, and there were some students who were very enthusiastic about becoming class president. After class, Kim Sojun began to think while shaking his chair. He felt that the people at school were strange, not only the principal but also the teachers in his class. He felt that they would not let him do whatever he wanted, but he was sure that it would not affect him, because in Korea he had been desperately trained. Even students and teachers had difficulty defeating him. While he was still shaking his chair, he suddenly lost his balance and almost fell down. Fortunately, Dan Sik-young came to save him. When he wanted to say thank you, Kim Sojun was surprised because the one who saved him was Dan Sik-young, a chatty woman he knew. Seeing Kim Sojung, Dan Sik-young asks if he is the masked man she knows, but because Kim Sojung thinks of Dan Sik-young as an annoying woman, he hides his identity and says he is not the person she is looking for. At first, Dan Sik-young doubts if she recognized the wrong person, but seeing Kim Sojung's strict attitude, she becomes convinced that Kim Sojung is not the masked man she recognizes because the masked man she knows has a friendly and generous nature. Feeling that she recognized the wrong person, Dan Sik-young left the classroom, leaving Kim Sojung behind. Soon, Kim Sojung was greeted by one of the students there named Yuson from Habok. He also returned the greeting by introducing himself. When he was about to shake his hand, Yuson looked at it with a strange look and asked what was wrong with his hand. Kim Sojung realized that in the world of martial arts, they are not familiar with shaking hands, so he abandoned his intention. In the chat, Yuson asked if Kim Sojun would sign up as class president, because from what he knew, if they became class president, then they would get 20% extra points. Kim Sojun, hearing this, was shocked. Initially, he was not interested in becoming class president, but now he was excited because if he managed to get these points, then he was likely to be the best student. He shouted in the classroom that he was going to be class president and took them all up to the roof. On the roof, all the class president candidates will fight each other. The first battle starts from Kim Sojun against Noah. Whoever survives the last is the strongest. The battle began. Noah, who was very excited to become class president, did not hesitate to unleash his strength. Around his body there was a yellow aura like fire that enveloped him. He then tore his pants to reveal a tiger-patterned shorts. Not much ado, Noah attacked Kim Sojun, although his strength was quite strong, but Kim Sojun managed to withstand the attack. Unlike the previous fight, now Kim Sojun counterattacked Noah with his fists and managed to hit Noah's body, making him bounce away. The action also made all the students surprised and did not expect that Kim Sojun had such extraordinary strength, although Noah was hit by his attack, but it turned out that it was not the end of their fight. From behind the billowing smoke, Noah was seen standing ready to attack, but not what he thought. He fell before he finally attacked again. Kim Sojun's victory received happy cheers from his classmates. The next battle was about to begin, because it would be very troublesome if he fought one-on-one with the class president candidates. Kim Sojun finally challenged the remaining 6 candidates to fight with him at once. The 6 of them then attacked Kim Sojun simultaneously, and he easily defeated them all. The rain came down, soaking the bodies of the class president candidates who were lying helplessly. Kim Sojun declared that he was now their class president, and he asked them to study well. His classmates cheered happily to welcome their new class president. He then smiled with satisfaction because he finally managed to get 20% extra points, enough to carry out his mission. But in the midst of that happiness,
A sword darted forward and almost hit him. Then several men approached him. One of the men was named Mo Yongju, Class President 1 and Class President 2, who came because they were interested in how they chose the class president. Mo Yongju gave Kim Sojun a dismissive look and said that Kim Sojun would be a useless class president, seeing how he dodged his attacks. Not even he was interested in playing with him.
He left, but stopped when a sword whizzed towards him and almost hit him in the face. Not to be underestimated, Kim Sojun challenged Mo Yongju to a fight with him, and with a sly smile, Mo Yongju accepted the challenge. At first, Mo Yongju felt that she didn't need to do anything to defeat Kim Sojun, because it would be easy. But when Kim Sojun's first attack came, he changed his mind because he didn't expect Kim Sojun to have such fast movements that it was difficult for him to avoid his attacks. Getting hit so hard, Mo Yongju ended up jumping into the air to avoid the attack. In his mind, it would be a shame and humiliation if he lost the battle. Picking up his sword that was stuck in the wall, Mo Yongju began to confront Kim Sojun more seriously. He smiled and said that Kim Sojun shouldn't make him fight with a sword, but his words were completely ignored by Kim Sojun. He brutally attacked Mo Yongju until he was cornered, until finally his sword could not withstand the power of Kim Sojun's sword, and finally broke. Kim Sojun's victory made everyone who was there very shocked, and Yosan also cheered for Kim Sojun's victory, who had now become their class president. Before he left there, Kim Sojun advised that from now on, he had to have good manners, and then Kim Sojun left, followed by his classmates. Together with Yusan, Kim Sojun also walked to the cafeteria for lunch. On the way, he asked about the meaning of chain god. Yusan explained that it was a term for someone who came from a 5-generation royal family. Seeing Kim Sojun's confused face, Yusan asked if he didn't know about his tax obligations. Without Kim Sojun answering, seeing the expression he showed, Yusan could easily tell if Kim Sojun didn't know all that at all. Yusan also explained that there were 9 famous groups including Gongdopa, Glorinpa, Shaolin, Wudang Tribe, Volcanic Tribe, Cheongseong Group, Jomchangpa, Southern Amila, Jongnampa, and there was also one group outside of that, which was the Beggar Group. It is said that the 5 great generations dominate the group. They are the most prestigious, pure-blooded, and the top of the middle class. After getting that explanation, Kim Sojun understood that Mo Yongju was one of those groups. That's why he had a very arrogant nature. Then Kim Sojun asked Yusan about his family. Yusan awkwardly answered that from what he heard, they were great people in the past. Because of the expression Yusan showed, he hit the back of Yusan's head and said why he said it sadly when his family sounded great. Hearing Kim Sojun's words, Yusan was touched and did not expect anyone to talk to him like that. Then, in his mind, from his experience of being a teacher, people with privilege usually always make trouble. As the class president, he had to know whether there were members of the upper class or not, so he asked Yusan about it. Yusan replied that there were no such people in their class at all, which is why many people in other classes called their class an inferiority class. Hearing that Kim Sojun did not wonder why the children in his class had a little deficiency. After walking for a long time, the two of them arrived at the cafeteria. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Mo Yongju and his colleagues came to a place to meet a man. The man congratulated them on their acceptance, but his eyes were distracted when he saw Mo Yongju's messy appearance. Knowing that Mo Yongju was defeated, he stood up from his chair and then approached him with an angry look and asked who did that to him because what he did was tantamount to demeaning the tax group. Sweat poured down Mo Yongju's face, and he knelt down to beg the man for forgiveness. The man took out his sword and struck Mo Yongju on the head and said he would give him a chance and he hoped Mo Yongju would do well. The man approached Mo Yongju and whispered something into his ear. He said that if there would be a new student admission ceremony, he could use the moment to harm him. It didn't matter if his body parts were cut off. He asked Mo Yongju to use the opportunity well because he wouldn't give a second chance to an incompetent person, and he smiled with a horrible grin.